All right, we will move on to the approval of the agenda as presented.
So move.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Director Brecken with a second from Director Ward. Discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Director Heidman.
I'd like to make a motion to remove item number 4 from the agenda, which is public comment by Chair Boyles.
Okay. Do we have a second on that motion?
Second. Yeah, I don't know how that works.
Yeah, Kevin, don't we already have a motion?
We have a motion on the table for approval of.
So you got 2 motions.
Right, so maybe we adjust the first motion, the motion to approve the agenda as presented. So discussion, you can hold your motion, Director Heidman.
Okay.
Discussion continuing, I'm in favor of removing it from the agenda as well, if the rest of the board is.
I'm in favor of that as well.
All
So
right.
Mr. Chair, are we voting on the motion?
So can we amend, I think we can amend the initial motion to approve, right, because Director Heidman is suggesting that we remove item number 4. So if we amended the agenda to approve the agenda per Director Heidman's amendment, that should get it done.
And then where would number 4 go?
It's being removed from the agenda. Would you want me to restate my motion, or?
Well, I think we have to withdraw the motion until we solve the first motion that's out there. You can't have 2 active motions at the same time, to my understanding. So we either have to amend the motion that's out there or vote on it as is, and so maybe we'll do that. Can we have a first, there's no such thing as a first. We have a motion with a second to approve the agenda as presented. We had some discussion, which included a motion, which we can't do right now. Those in favor of the motion to approve the agenda as published, say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
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 All right, so that motion fails, and Director Heidman, you're now free to make a motion.
Okay. Make a motion to remove item number 4 from tonight's agenda, which is a public statement by Chair Boyles.
Second.
Okay, now discussion.
So, Mr. Chair,
Director Ward.
is your purpose not to have a statement by Chair Boyles at all? Or
No.
is it,
No, it would be, as you brought up in a board retreat, the ability at the end of the board meeting for update. Where
okay,
anybody.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so I don't want to put words in Director Heidman's mouth, but is your motion to approve the agenda as presented with the removal of item number 4?
Yes, that would be a true statement, yeah.
And is it true that you would second that motion, Director Dondlinger?
Yes.
Is there any further discussion on this motion? Okay, hearing none. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
No,
No.
3-2, motion carries. It's removed. Okay, we'll move on to, oh wait, yeah, we're good. Let me write that down.
Recognitions.
On to recognitions. I will start this off. Welcome back to school year 24-25 for all students, staff, and families. A special welcome to all new students and staff joining our Warrior families this school year. For recognition bullet number 2, I would like to pass this one to Director Ward.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Congratulations to the 2024 Distinguished Achievement Hall of Fame inductees. John Mollum, a 1912 Brainerd High School graduate for his service in public leadership. Ann Nelson, a 1962 Brainerd High School graduate for her service in history. And Eric Ward, a 1996 Brainerd High School graduate for his service in entrepreneurship. And somebody I dearly know and love.
Great, great.
Thank you.
Congratulations to the following students who were selected for the Brainerd High School Homecoming Court: Olivia Brown, Brianna Finnegan, Garrett Gilbert, Reese Glynn, David Harris, Chad King, Ty Nelson, Autumn Schiller, Ben Statham, and Maya Tauchis. And congratulations to Reese Glynn and Ty Nelson for being selected as the 2024 Homecoming King and Queen. There we go. So we move on to public input. Karen Knudsen, please. And just to remind everybody, a member of the public can address the board during this time. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Complaints or allegations against students or employees may not be discussed due to data privacy. Complaints or allegations must be submitted in writing to Superintendent Grant. The Board of Education superintendent will not converse with guests to address the topics covered at this time. If you give me half a second, Karen, I'll get my timer set up.
Okay.
And you are good to go. Thank you.
Okay. As a community member and a taxpayer, I'm expressing my concern about the unprofessional manner in which Kevin Boyles used his position to misuse school district resources for his own personal use. As a school board chairman, he asked and influenced a staff member on paid work time to gather information about other candidates and call and alert him as applications were submitted, thereby gaining an advantage not available to other candidates. As a subordinate school employee, she could have been made to feel either pressured or obligated to supply the requested information. This employee either did not know this was unethical or was not comfortable denying this school board chairman's request. A house divided cannot stand. If the intended outcome was to cause imbalance in the school board in his preferred favor or encourage someone else not to run, that would go against the basic standard of giving citizens the vote. School board elections should not be polarized by personal or partisan gain, but by the vote of the citizens. Each candidate should find ways to stand out from the other candidates with what they have to offer the district and the board in order to establish a clear vision relevant to student success and achievement and fiscal responsibility for the district. They also need to both encourage and support innovative ways to improve education and high moral and ethical values in our schools. School board members are unsung heroes in the community if they establish vision and goals that represent the values and views of the community. They are pro-visionaries for parents. The children belong to the parents from birth to adulthood. They want to know they can trust you to be open, honest, and truthful in all situations. The decisions you make can secure a partnership with parents, but if they see something as untrustworthy, they can withdraw their children from the public schools, and that in turn affects the budget. Keep in mind that education is not a line item on the budget. It is the only item on the school budget and directs how other finances and other issues are afforded. I urge you as a board, regardless of the outcome, to function as a team. See others as more important than yourself. Don't polarize others to see things your way. You may be wrong. Put politics aside in order to focus on the improvement of educational opportunities and good performance for all students. Welcome creativity. Promote the attainment of higher student performance and success. Promote excellence. Unite as a board. Agree to be objective. And one last thought. If you can't play fair and you have to pick your own team, get off the playing field. You don't get to pick the team. We, the people, do. Integrity is the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles that refuse to change. Be morally upright as a part of the whole, undivided in purpose, which is to serve the public for the advancement of education and teaching our children to make good and right choices in a world that can be challenging and also deceiving. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Ness, please.
Just a public statement for the board. I sit before you all as a product of the Brainerd Public School System. I was a member of the last class to graduate from this building in 1968. In my years as a young student, I experienced a consolidation of the country school system and the culture blending into the city schools. I even am old enough to remember release time classes that gave us an hour every Friday to reflect on our spiritual health. For almost 70 years, this was in the elementary classroom. or later on, it was in the house of faith, if the individual desired. It was considered a normal part of our elementary or our educational development. What I learned, my values, my sense of pride, my pride in my country, and my love of literature, music, and history developed within these walls. And these walls were deemed obsolete in my last year. After 40 years, this building was not as old as the new Brainerd High School today, but it was packed with students and one of the finest school systems in the state. I was taught by a faculty that remembered World War I, fought in World War II in Korea, and could relate stories of their grandparents in the Spanish-American War. We understood how fragile our life and community and country are. Many of us left this environment to go almost directly to Vietnam. Some of us didn't return. The values we acquired here stood the test and gave many of us the underpinnings of faith, faith in ourselves, our heritage, and the courage for leadership and success in life. We all know who Ron Stolsky is. He first was Brainerd Warriors activity director and athletic director. He instituted many good programs in the school. One of the best creations was a program-wide theme or mantra, which became known as the Warrior Way. It was initially about how we were going to behave and what we were going to believe in. The first principle of the Warrior Way was to create and maintain an environment of integrity that people wanted to be a part of. It's a philosophy that is grounded in respect.
Thank you, Mark. That's 3 minutes.
That's 3 minutes.
Have a great meeting. Next is Susanna Lamuska.
Hello, I'm Susanna Lamuska, and I've got 2 elementary students in our district, and I'm a community member. And I just wanted to voice some concerns surrounding the intervention programs, the positions that have gotten cut this year. My family personally can speak to how they have impacted our 4th grader, and with her permission, I'm able to share her little story. But Mary Gail, during COVID, was a preschooler, kindergarten, and 1st grader. By the time she got to 2nd grade, our first parent-teacher conference, the teacher told us that she was 5 reading levels below. And in order to be at grade level at the end of 2nd grade, she would need to do 9 reading levels, which caught us off guard, but we got to work and we utilized the intervention programs that are offered at this district, and she was able to complete 9 reading levels, which is 2 grade levels worth at 2nd grade. It took a lot of work, but it also included 15 minutes with her teacher and a half an hour at least 3 to 5 days a week with the interventionist. My concerns that with us cutting these programs is the additional stress that is putting on our teachers. When kids are not at grade level, the self-esteem and lack of confidence goes with them. Other kids know that they're not. So I realize that the budget is a huge issue. I realize why we had to do the cuts, but if you look at the report card for Brainerd from MDE, we are not where we need to be. And I am just really concerned that if we're not helping our kids by 3rd grade get to those levels, there are statistics that show if they're not reading, comprehending, and able to read proficiently, they are more likely to end up in trouble. So this is very concerning that we have cut these. I get it, the money is an issue, but I'm asking that we would reconsider for sure for next year getting some of these positions back. Because I know we're not the only family that has experienced the benefits of the interventionist. So, thank you.
Thanks, Suze.
Next up is Rick Felt, please.
There's not a single perfect person in this room. Everybody makes mistakes. In January 1977, I drank a whole fifth of brandy on an empty stomach, and I almost died from alcohol poisoning. But it was probably one of the most stupid mistakes I ever made in my life, but it was almost one of the best things that happened in my life, because the very next day I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior, and He delivered me from the addiction of alcoholism. And that is exactly what I'm praying for Kevin Boyles, that this would be a turnaround point in your life. I realized that I had apologized to my squad in the Army for letting them down, but I also repented. And the repentance meant a lot more to my constituents that I had let down than my apology did. And that is a true sign of a leader. I could make a strong argument that the Spirit of God is already bringing judgment upon this school system. Just in the last 3 years alone, we're on our third superintendent. 2 years ago, we had 5 school board members drop out of the race. First time in 130-year history that we had 5 directors on the ballot. We went from top 10 in the high school down to 161. We have multiple financial difficulties. We've got the largest mass exodus of this school in 130-year history. I would say that the judgment of the Lord is coming upon this school system. Now, the point that you have to realize, is this a prophetic warning? Is God going to bring judgment upon you? I believe that sometimes He will, and I pray that I'm wrong. But I believe that He's going to give you a chance to repent and turn to Him for guidance. And I believe that God will bless the school system again if you do that. But if you don't, I really do believe that the Spirit of the Lord is going to come upon you. And I pray that the repentance and the turnaround would come into this school board. And I pray that as you seek God's guidance, that He would bless you in many, many ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Shirley Yeager, please.
Good evening. It's good to see you all for a new year. I would like to read the text messages exchanged between Chairman Boyles and the unidentified school employee back in July and August. I will only read the ones where the employee initiated the contact. They were gathered through data request after Mr. Boyles himself revealed what he had done, and when questioned, said he didn't think he had done anything wrong. July 30th, employee, Charles is here. Boyles, thanks. Employee, Andrew is here now. August 5th, employee, Stephanie Ederman was just in to file. Boyles, thanks. Now we wait to see if the mystery person files. Employee, I'll let you know. Boyles, thanks again. August 12th, employee, Mike Stromberg just filed for school board. Boyles, son of a bitch, thanks. Can you send me his contact info? Employee, unexpected, obviously. Boyles, DJ let me know over the weekend, but didn't really seem excited by him, but there was no guarantee he would file. Employee, gotcha. August 13th, employee, hey Kevin, I was looking at your withdrawal affidavit and I think you need to redo it with a candidacy filing date of July 30th and then sign it for the 14th. It looks like I keep them and let the county know by end of day on the 15th. Boyles, okay, thanks. Employee, okay, I put a sign on the main doors for school board candidates to go upstairs to 203 and told the front office gals. They leave at 3:30. Boyles, okay, thanks. Employee, so I hear Charles just showed up. Boyles, yep. Andrew is refusing to drop. Go figure. My comment is that if we expect integrity in our students, then integrity must be modeled by all the leaders in authority over our school district. I believe this community would like to feel confident that you as a board will uphold consistent values both in public and in private. We want to be able to trust all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Andrew Mendez.
Hi.
Good to see you all. My name's Andrew. I'm here to speak about the mental health issues in our school district. A government's first and most fundamental duty is to protect the people that they represent. The U.S. Surgeon General declared that declining youth mental health is, quote, the defining public health challenge of our time, unquote, even more so than COVID-19. According to Minnesota Student Survey data, in our district, by the time students reach 5th grade, over half of them are experiencing symptoms of depression and anxiety. By the time they reach 8th grade, 12% of students have attempted to take their own life, and over 30% of them have seriously considered it. Approximately 17% of our high school students have tried to take their own life already, and more than 40% of them have seriously considered it. Despite over 70% of our high school students experiencing symptoms of depression or anxiety, only 36% of students have received any treatment for these symptoms. Outside, in the back, there are 3 school buses. Every single seat on those school buses could be filled by the high schoolers who have already attempted to take their own life. It is nothing short of a miracle that all of those students are still with us today. Each time we collect this data, every single one of these figures continues to get worse and worse. Later today, the board will decide on creating a task force to try to stop this issue from worsening. I beg each and every one of you to support this measure and to fulfill your most important duty to protect our students by making immediate and drastic changes to save our students' lives. We need to make sure that every child feels loved, supported, cared, and valued, and know that we are willing to do whatever it takes to keep them here. Because no one wants to wake up another time and find out that they lost their child, their sibling, their friend, their classmate, and their student. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony Bauer, please.
Good evening. I was very disappointed to see the chairman of this board seemingly misusing taxpayer resources, namely the time of a school district employee, to convey information regarding other school board candidates' filing status. I wonder, did any other school board candidate have the same courtesy extended to them? It also appears to be an abuse of the position for your chairman to use district board time to discuss his personal behavior. It's not a school board issue. I might add, it seems an abuse of the position to arrange the agenda that he might speak to this personal actions, let alone before allowing public comments to be made. But I'm pleased to see that this agenda was modified to remove that comment period. Thank you.
Thank you. And then our final public comment is Jeff Chesak, please.
Sorry. Good
You want us
evening.
to speak so you can
Yeah, thank you.
boil straight ahead?
Pardon me?
I'm straight ahead. Did you want others to speak so you know who's where?
I got it.
Okay.
DJ, Randy, John, Michelle, right?
Okay. Yep.
Okay, thank you for giving me the time. I was thinking of something that is, if you're not telling the truth, you're lying. And I think what the school district needs, as much as protecting students' mental health, is honesty, integrity, and trust. You heard your school board superintendent talk about all those things. Just listen to the first half hour of your interview with him back on June 4th. He went over that time and time again. I heard Mr. Ness talk about the warrior way. I don't think he got a chance to finish, but I presume he was going to talk about what is the warrior way. Warrior way is about integrity, honesty, helping a teammate from the other side of the field, at the other side of the field, opposition, helping him up when he's down on the ground, giving him a hand. You don't want your athletes to cheat to win. Nobody would want that. I often listen to the Vikings with Paul Allen. I love it because he's objective. He tells what's going on, whether it's a good play, a penalty against his team that's fair, he'll call it. If it's a penalty in favor of the other team that was bad, he'll call it. If it's a penalty against the other team that's in favor of the Vikings and it's not the right call, he'll call it. He'll say it. We want truth. That's what the public wants. They want honesty. And I'm glad also that you took the item off the agenda to allow Chairman Boyles to speak, because it's his own personal time. It's a personal matter that he got involved with. This is no place to use the public resource of this meeting to talk about your personal issues, Mr. Boyles. It is a resource that is not available to anyone else, just like using a staff person to serve you, like you did in the text messages. I imagine there was phone calls. When I talked to you, you said, excuse me, you said, I had her contact me when people file. So a data request was made, obviously. I didn't see the text message from her to you when she told you I called. That's another thing. Were you supposed to get phone calls or communications from her when people called and asked who filed? I didn't see that in there, but that's what you told me. So if you want to go on at the end of the meeting and give your speech, a statement, it's only self-serving, Mr. Boyles. You're compromised. You are conflicted. You should not be speaking at all. And any item coming before this board to talk about what happened between a school staff member and yourself, taking care of your own personal business as a candidate, and that is wrong, and everybody knows it. So I hope the board has enough courage to stop that before it happens. You are conflicted. You are compromised. That is where you abstain for any discussion to do the right thing. That's what the district wants. That's what the people want. So do the right thing. Keep your mouth closed over this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. 3 minutes exactly. Well done. All right, no further public comment. We will move along to approval of the minutes from our last meeting on August 12th, please.
I make a motion, we approve the minutes from our last meeting.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion from Director Brecken with a second from Director Heidman. Any discussion?
Bless you.
Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consent calendar. I have a note on this one, Director Ward, that somewhere in the consent calendar is a donation that you provided. So will you be abstaining from this vote?
If I need to.
I believe that's the recommendation.
Okay.
Director? Chair?
Yes, Director Heidman.
I just want to make a notation. I mean, all of the gifts that we get are fantastic, but I believe the Nisswa Lions Club gave almost $9,000 to Nisswa Elementary for their speaker system up there. That's a nice hefty gift. So, I mean, all of them are appreciated, but that one kind of stood out to me. So that was very nice from that standpoint. Yep.
Okay, great.
Chair Boyles,
Director Ward.
since I am going to be abstaining due to a donation, I wouldn't have voted for the consent calendar just because on the consent calendar is the approval of the 2025 through 2027 Brainerd High School yearbook agreement with Jostens. I really think the board needs to take a look at that, and you'll hear a little bit more about it maybe during the financial report. I just want to make the board aware of that the Jostens contract, we need to look at more competitive sources. The yearbook is, you'll hear more about that during the financial committee report, but I wanted to make that clear that I would have been voting against it just because of the Jostens contract for the yearbook.
Is it getting expensive?
Yes.
Director Ward? Okay.
And Director Donnelly can chime in as well. We are losing, the district is losing significant money with the yearbook at the high school, not so much at the middle school, but at the high school.
And I'm assuming then it costs students a lot more money then too.
It costs more money for the students as well. So just wanted to point that out. And in the future, I hope that, I mean, now we'd be tucked into a contract for 25, 27, but,
So is this issue was raised at the finance committee meeting?
yes, it was.
Okay.
The middle school uses a different company
Yep,
than Jostens, and we get the rings and the pictures are taken by the other company.
yep.
But the rings, if they're still doing rings, and the yearbooks actually come from Jostens. And their staff person that does it really likes the Jostens rep, and maybe likes the product better, because we didn't get to see any of that. But, we heard about it, and it's getting to be awfully expensive, which is kinda sad, but I suppose it's just the way things go. I don't know.
Mr. Chair?
They recommended that we stick with Jostens, at least for this year, and maybe open it up for
But
next
this
year.
approves that for 3 more years, basically,
Yeah.
if I'm reading this right.
Does it?
So,
Can I make?
Go ahead, Director.
Can I make a motion to pull that out of the consent calendar
Yeah, we have no active motions on the table.
for further discussion at a future board meeting? I mean, we're kinda locked in for 25 this school year, right, John?
right, DJ?
I think so. Should we ask Marcy if it makes a difference if we did 1 year or 3 years? Marcy, can we go 1 year?
We can, but then we lose out on some of the perks.
I suppose.
So the 3-year gets you some of those additional benefits. And the advisor is aware, and he's trying to find other ways to, like, for example, last year they started advertising, which I shared with the 2 board members. So we are trying to turn it around, but this,
We as committee members also made some suggestions on how to improve the financial situation. My concern is, just as Director Heidemann said, a 3-year contract versus a 1-year contract. And if I was a salesman, I'd be looking to find some perks too. Because it's good for him or her.
What is the cost for the students?
I believe it's
65?
65 is our cost, I think.
At cost, you said?
I think 65 is what we pay.
that's what their cost is.
Well, that's what the
Okay.
student's cost is.
Yeah,
Fifty
I'd have to
something,
go back and look.
$50 and some change for costs.
Where we're losing, Michelle, is that we have to have a staff person, because they're the photographers, and they gotta lay the book out, and I mean, it's different than any other class, I guess. They're learning something doing all that, I would think. I mean, it's good for you, learn to lay stuff out and all those things. So that's all part of the thing. I don't think we're actually losing money on the book. And I don't think that the other ones, which we didn't get a number, but I don't think the other ones are gonna be $30. It might be 52. So I don't know, it's life-changing, but I understand. And there is talk about it, because for some reason, the middle school program's been doing great. They've been making money. Not that we're here to make money, but it goes both ways, so.
The difference, the financial difference really is about $60,000. So it's not a little
Over multiple years.
over multiple years, but it's not an insignificant, in my opinion, it's not insignificant.
No, it's not.
But the high school book is probably nicer than the middle.
Oh, for sure.
Traditionally, the middle school yearbooks have just been pretty basic and.
I would prefer to see a 1-year contract and talk about it. Marcia, I'm sorry, but I don't think we even talked about that at the finance committee about,
I didn't realize it was a 3-year at the finance committee. I didn't even catch it on this consent agenda.
We didn't, because they did give us an offer of 1 versus 3, but we went with the 3 because of the additional perks. We don't get that with the
how
1
about
year.
it gives us additional perks in 1-year contract?
Yeah, I mean.
And part of it was, the advisor does like to work with this company, so they did want to see the 3-year as well.
What are the perks?
So in the contract in there, I think there's an additional 1,500 noted.
Yep, okay.
Which we would not get with the 1 year.
1,500 for the 3 years.
So $500 a year.
And, Marcy, and I apologize if I too didn't realize it was a 3-year contract. Did we discuss that at the finance committee and I did not get that?
Good question. I'm trying to recall if I noted
I
that
don't
or
remember
not.
talking about that.
Yeah,
And when I saw it on the agenda, I'm going, for 3 years?
yeah.
That's concerning.
Well, you guys are a lot closer to this issue than I am, and I'm certainly not gonna sit here and,
Well, Marcy's a heck of a lot closer to it than either
Okay.
John or I. We just heard
All
about it
right.
last week.
One of the things that I proposed during that meeting was we do have a substantial fund balance at the middle school. We could transfer to cover that deficit to help offset and basically give them a restart, a refresh. So
That's not the
Marcy, would you be okay with a one-year contract and reevaluate?
I would be okay with that, but I think the advisor would be a little upset about that, just because we've pretty much committed to Jostens at this point to a 3-year, but
Maybe he'd like to come and give us a presentation.
you're a tough salesman, John. If you guys are okay with that, we could wipe out the deficit, go with the 3-year, and at the end of this 3-year, if we have another deficit, then we need to look at other vendors. If that's fair.
Say that again, Marcy, please.
We go with this, we wipe out the deficit, we see how they do the following these next 3 years, and if they are continuing to have a deficit, then we say we have to look at other vendors.
When?
can that be?
At the end of this contract.
So we gotta go we have to go for the 3 years though.
Yep.
We can't write something into the contract to say we can get out of it after the first year if this continues on this path.
I can ask the question, but
She's more worried about the advisor that runs the yearbook.
Yeah, and that's legitimate.
Yeah, it is.
That is legitimate. Mr. Jensen does a great job.
The sad part is, we don't know if we're gonna save, this budget's 47.5, so we don't know if it's gonna be 46, or if
Right.
it's gonna be 22.
Right.
22, it's like, oh geez, that's a lot of money. If it's $1,000 to upset everybody, maybe it just isn't really worth it. I don't know. This is how this school board stuff goes. We don't really know about it till it's too late, but I guess we're supposed to worry about bigger things, maybe, I don't know.
What is the deficit right now?
it's, I just looked at ending last year, or 2 years ago, because we're still closing, it was 25,000. And we can cover that in the other site.
We can cover that with the middle school revenues.
Yep.
Because they're generating more than the deficit of the high school.
Why is there such a deficit?
It's just been accumulating year after year, and making people aware, right? Like, hey, we gotta be watching this. So everyone is aware now.
What, do you have any idea what % of students buy the book?
I don't know that.
That's kind of
My next
the sad situation that we're turning into. Everything's just digital.
Yeah.
I mean, I found my old yearbook here, trying to look somebody up before our 40th class reunion. I was going through that puppy.
Well, that's an antique now. We'll get into that.
Excuse me.
So
And part of
I'm
that
personally, Marcy, okay with your recommendation, what Marcy just recommended. And what I heard you say was, accept this contract, we'll review it at the end of this year. The committee has made some suggestions to the advisor about looking at possibilities of how to generate more revenue. And I know that will be also told to him, and so I'm okay with that.
I think Marcy was suggesting we look at it at the end of 3 years.
Right.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood that.
I mean, I can ask him if we could revisit it at the end of this year and still sign the 3-year and just make sure we're monitoring it. But that's based on the feedback you guys give me.
Okay, I'm sorry if I'm being slow here, but what's the reason for the deficit?
So the expenses that come out of the yearbook are the advisor and any type of supplies,
Got it.
cameras,
Okay.
you name it, that is related to that club.
Okay.
And so over the years, if they've spent more than what they've collected, it just continues to accumulate.
Okay.
So we take all the pictures. This club, yearbook club. Staff,
Yearbook staff.
students and advisor. They do all the work and they just kind of put it together and then Jostens prints it?
Correct.
Is it a class? It's a class, isn't it?
I believe they get a
That is a
credit for it.
class. It's a class.
Yeah. don't know, I think we're losing money in about every class right now, so I don't know what the big difference is really.
Well,
We don't have money-making classes, we don't make money in math. You know, we don't make money in English, we don't make money in gym, what classes do we make money in?
So right now, just so I can get this in my pea brain, what is the final cost of a yearbook for a student?
I believe it, don't quote me, but I believe it's 65.
Okay,
I thought it was.
I think you're close.
and it's a pretty, I'm assuming it's a pretty thick yearbook. I mean, this isn't something that's.
Right.
Okay.
It's
Right,
like 200 pages.
I was gonna
and
say,
200
200
pages.
200 plus.
I want to put more kids on each page, let's get it down to 100.
I don't want to delay the
Yeah.
discussion, but I wanted to bring it up because I'll be abstaining. I think it's a worthy discussion, and I really do mean,
Okay.
I really do mean that, you know, maybe it is time for him to come in front of the full board. I would like to have you offer that to him,
Who's him?
or
The salesperson.
Josh.
Salesman, okay.
I'm sorry.
Here's the deal, maybe we'd be better off if we just had the supervisor, or the staff person, he bringing them with them, and just come to one of our retreats. So we're not hogging up board time.
Good point.
They could come and kind of explain to us, so we
Good
really
point.
understand what all goes into it.
Yeah.
It's $65 sounds kind of expensive.
All right,
Yep. I am going to remove my motion.
okay.
Done.
Okay.
Well, we could still approve this, but so in the future, like John's talking about, we kind of actually know what we're talking about. That's just gonna come before us. If it didn't come before us, then they would just do what they want to do, and we wouldn't.
Yeah, my motion was to
Know any
remove,
better.
just to remove this from the consent and have it as a separate agenda.
Oh, I
item.
think we need to get moving if you're gonna have your books for the end of the year.
I know, that's why I'm,
So he's withdrawing the motion, so we
why
can go
I'm
back to
withdrawing the
just
motion
taking a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
as presented.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Director Dondelinger with a second from Director Heidman to approve the consent calendar as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Abstain.
One abstention. Motion
That's
carries.
great.
Thank
Get
you.
abstained.
All right, we'll move on to our old business, and we are, first up is a presentation from Morris Leatherman, by Peter Leatherman.
And I was just gonna say, in Peter's absence, I'm gonna introduce Peter Leatherman with Morris Leatherman.
Very good.
All right.
Hi, Peter.
Welcome to Brainerd, sir.
Peter for Peter. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening to talk about what we do and how we've helped school districts over the last 40 years. As school districts go into funding requests to the public, a lot of them will do a community survey. The purpose of the community survey, there's 4 major parts of a community survey. The first is to understand the general atmospherics in the district, because we know, after working on over 1,000 referendums and levies over the years, the number one factor is to understand that general atmospherics at a macro level. You want folks to walk in the voting booth on election day and make a simple cost-benefit analysis. What's being asked for and how much does it cost, and make the decision on that value equation. You don't want them to walk in the voting booth with symbolic no votes. Issues with the past, issues with personality, any of those sorts of things. So it's important to understand. And this involves multiple questions where we look at the overall quality of education. We look at the involvement of the community. We look at decision-making. We look at financial management, administration, governance, and those sorts of factors. Then we get into the specifics of the survey that you're looking at, what the funding request is, operating levy bond, the components. We test communications to understand where are folks getting their information, how do they prefer to receive their information, and then also we can test messaging. What resonates, what doesn't resonate with districts, with residents on a potential funding request. And in looking at messaging, you test the pros and the cons. You don't just test the pros because then you've created a biased survey. It's not neutrally worded. So that's kind of the general idea of why districts do surveys. Now, there's two primary methods of surveys out there. Pollsters have had a difficult time, and a lot of folks have not bathed themselves in glory in providing less than accurate polls over the years, and especially you see it in the presidential races, all the time. The methodology matters in a survey. That's the most important part when you look at the first thing. When I opened the Star Tribune today and saw the Minnesota poll, the first thing I did was go and look at the methodology first. There are two types. You have the opt-in survey, which is primarily internet or mail-out surveys, where folks will make a decision on whether they want to participate in that survey. Now, there are two inherent biases introduced to the data. The first is upfront. In an internet survey in Minnesota, 5 to 10% of people don't have access to the internet. It's a very specific demographic. So you've immediately eliminated that group from the ability to participate in the survey. On the mail-out side, I make the joke, but it's very accurate. My 24-year-old son doesn't know where the mailbox is. Much less is he going to go take a survey out of the mailbox, fill it out, God forbid, try to find a stamp, put it in, and then mail it back. It's not going to happen. So you have an age demographic bias in both of those. That's important up front. But the most important part is the self-selection bias that happens. What we have found historically in the past, and I'll give an example. Back in the 90s, God, that makes me sound old. We did a survey for the city of Fridley with the business community. And the mayor wanted to do a mail out. And we said we can do a mail out, but within that mail out, we have to randomly select 400 businesses that we have to hear from. And so in doing that, we did the initial mail out. You get 10, 25, 30% return. It's your typical mail-out return, sometimes down to 10%. But then we still had this 400 that we tracked. We needed to hear from. They got the reminders on the surveys. We need to hear from you. We actually ended up calling about 25% of the folks in order to finish the survey. When you looked at the data back then, and you looked at just everybody who returned the survey, and then the controlled random sample within it, the general population was 10% more negative. It's human nature. If you have a complaint, you're going to go on and complain. Look at reviews for restaurants. Nobody goes on and says, I had a good meal. They go on, it's either the greatest meal in the world or it was terrible. And that's what has happened in the opt-in surveys. What we have been seeing recently over the last 10 years with some of these surveys is the reverse, where supporters try to win the surveys. And they overrepresent. My hometown in Wisconsin failed a referendum and brought in a company to do a mail-out survey, a post-election survey. They came back 6 weeks later, and the results of their survey showed that it passed 65-35. It had actually failed 40-60. But the supporters returned the surveys. The opponents didn't. And so it really gives a distorted view of what the public as a whole looks at. Now, they do have an advantage. It's a great engagement tool for participation. At the end of the day, though, it's a large focus group. You really cannot set a margin of error because of the bias that introduced with self-selection. And so we've been doing, my business partner started the company in 1983. I joined in 1994. And what we do is telephone random surveys. It's changed over the years in how we do it. The key with the telephone is everybody has an equal chance to be called. It's random. We've included cell phones in the mix since 2007. In order to compensate for folks going from landlines to cell phones. You know, currently in Minnesota, it just did a statewide that we've shared with AMSD, the School Boards Association. I presented that last week. We find it's about 55 to 60% of Minnesotans are cell phone only. There are still 10% landline only. They do exist. And then the rest have some sort of combination. And so I pull up the database for the Brainerd School District. I do what the skip interval for if the sample is going to be 400. I want 400 randomly selected people that live in the Brainerd School District. In order to make sure that the sample is representative, because that's also the key factor, we do quota-based telephone calls. Those surveys that you see right now out there in the papers talking about the presidential race they do it over the course of 2 nights. They call whoever answers the phone, and then they reweight. You'll have, if you call over the course of 2 evenings, you'll have 70% that are women, because men don't answer the phone, and you'll have 2/3 that are over the age of 65. You have an inherent bias at the outset, but then they think, okay, well, we'll just reweight the data, because if households with children are underrepresented, we'll just tell the computer to make it is what it is in the demographics. But that assumes that demographics and behavior are entwined, and they're not. And so we take a different method. It does take longer for us to make the phone calls. We're in the field for about 2 weeks. And so when we call, it's not, okay, you can't take the survey right now. Most pollsters will just say, hang up, call the next number. We say, when is it convenient for you to take the survey? And we set up appointments. Half the surveys are completed by appointment at this day and time because people are busy. And so by doing that, I can set quotas based on census information. I know the number of renters versus homeowners. I know the number of households with children. I know the number of households with seniors. All of those sorts of factors, and we're monitoring that as we're going through the process in order to ensure that we have a representative sample of the school district as a whole. Now, if we continue, I've talked about a few parts of this. We own our own call center. I have a phone bank in Cannon Falls, and they do all the calls. It's done in-house. I don't outsource it. The average longevity of my phoners is about 11 years. They've been doing this. It's a special skill to get on the phone, especially, when I work with cities. Some cities will have 150 to 200 questions on their survey. That's a lot of questions. You develop relationships with people when you have a conversation that long. The important thing to understand, though, is people still care about their local government. I can't ask 150 questions on what people think of the federal government. I wouldn't get past 5 questions with people. They're fed up. The state government, we might get to 20, and then they're done. But when we're talking your school district, you're talking your city, people still care, and they're willing to take the time because they view that the input can have an impact in the decision-making. They don't think it can impact St. Paul, much less Washington, D.C. Now, I put this chart in just to understand there's kind of 2 ways that districts use our services. And it's the sequence of the timing. There's a 2-survey approach and a 1-survey approach. 15 to 20 years ago, the 1-survey approach was really what was done. And districts would talk internally and come up with a plan. This is what the funding request is. This is what it includes. Go out and test it in the community. What we found, and it came out of a very specific school, it came out of the Wayzata School District about 13 years ago, where it was a bond referendum, and they had a facilities committee that spent 6 months working on what they should do in the Wayzata School District for buildings. They had this plan. At that time, it was almost $200 million, which was a lot of money back then. Not 495 that District Rosemont Apple Valley Egan just passed last year, but it was significant. And then they brought me in to do the survey, and we tested the package, and it didn't have a chance of passing. It included things that people didn't support. The tax increase was too high, even when Wayzata. And then the board had to make a decision to go back to the facilities committee, who had spent 6 months studying this, and tell them to start over. Well, that did not go over very well. And so we've kind of come up and recommend the 2-survey approach as long as there's time. And I always say the first survey, you know, I have districts I'm writing surveys for now that will do the first survey for a fall 2025 election the week after this year's election. And they're doing what we call a guardrail survey. And the survey goes out, looks at the atmospherics, like I discussed the reasoning for the atmospherics, but then on some specifics, like I just today wrote a bond referendum survey where we're testing various components. We test the tax tolerance. We test folks' predisposition. And that way, as this facilities committee starts their planning process, they will understand where the community is at the outset, what items are supported, what are not supported, and help tailor a package. Now, as they work through that process and they develop the final package, most of them will have us come back and do a short follow-up survey. And that's done around the time the board would make the decision, April, May, hopefully not June or July, because they're getting too close to the election, to actually test the specific. And so probably 90% of clients now are doing this 2-survey approach to establish the guardrails and basically not waste people's time, volunteers' time, citizens' time in the community, administration time, and board time. So something comes forward that is acceptable to the community as a whole. So this is just a summary. I just wanted to kind of lay out the general of how we do it and why we do it the way we do it, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Mr. Chair.
Director Ward.
Thank you. So, Peter, right?
Yes.
Mr. Leatherman?
Yes.
We had a strategic plan done just recently. We gathered a lot of information on that plan, lots of information on a very, very high % return. We had a really great, remarkable return on it. When your bankers, your phone bankers take the call or, do a call and start asking questions, when somebody fills out a mail-in survey, that's, in my opinion, that's how they really do feel. When they talk on the phone, tell me about the bias involved with the questions that are given and how the banker perceives the recipient's answer. Did you follow me?
Yeah. I mean, it's bias in surveys. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I always tell clients, you hire me the key thing that we do is write neutrally worded surveys. I've heard everything over 30 years, but nobody has ever come back to me and said, your survey is not neutral. I can write a question to elicit whatever answer you want. It doesn't do anybody any good. At the end of the day, it needs to be neutral. And so when we work with clients, as we write the survey, like I said, the client today, they told me the topics they're looking at for a potential bond referendum. I write the survey in a neutral way, and then it's a back and forth. They control the topics, I control the wording, because I need a neutral survey. So the phone bank, the phoner has the script. The phoner cannot vary off of what's written on the survey. If they do, they're terminated. It's quite simple. There's no, that's why it is a special skill to do what my phoners do, because you cannot have any judgment. You cannot have any value. You've seen, you can go back to the 2016 election. One of the reasons the polling was off is because people didn't want to tell somebody they didn't know that they supported Donald Trump. I mean, that's a bias that comes through, and that often comes through with the phoner. And so it's very important. I mean, we just hold ourselves to the highest standards on that.
That's my concern about a phone interview.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? That's my concern about a phone interview,
Yeah.
is the bias from the banker.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it can be.
And you said if that banker does that, then they're fired.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you fired some of them?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
So that does happen then,
I think the last one was like 7 years ago.
okay? All right, that was my next question.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's few and far in between. I mean, we have systems, so the supervisor, I mean, we have to validate the surveys are completed. The systems are in place for you can follow and track the call.
I mentioned our strategic plan, which had a great return last year. How would you use any of that information?
It depends, if we test, it depends how it equates to the funding request you're looking at. And so, you know, I have seen operating levies put in place with, you know, a lot of the discussion of the funding of supporting the strategic plan. The thing is, you know, surveys, strategic plans always are snapshots in time. Where the community was at last year can be a completely different environment to where they are now. And so, you know, and what we saw in, you know, especially in '23, you know, we worked with almost 60 school districts and we got 79% of the questions passed at a time in Minnesota last year where 41% of districts passed their funding request. It really did not come down to any things the district could have done because what happened last year was macroeconomic. We saw it, the financially stressed households across the state of Minnesota was at an all-time high going back to the recession of 2008, 2009. You know, we had 58, 59% saying my income is not meeting my expenses. And so what that comes down to then for folks as they go into the voting booth, you know, before the pandemic, the norm in Minnesota was about 26% financially stressed. So we're more than 2x what people are feeling financially. You know, most of the time people are making a decision. I have $100. Do I want to give the $100? Last year and this year, people don't have the $100 in their pocket. It's not a if I want to. It's I don't have it, and that's what has hurt so many school districts with the failures in the last few years. I'd like to say it's getting better. The statewide I just mentioned that I shared with the School Boards Association last week, we're at 51% financially stressed. It's come down a little bit, but it's still double what it was. Most importantly, that we ask a 4-part question on the impact of inflation on one's household. We're down to only 10% of Minnesotans now saying it's not impacted me at all. We have 16% of Minnesotans saying I've had to cut buying basics. And we've had 47% tell us that they're cutting discretionary spending. So that's almost 2/3 of Minnesotans that are either cutting the basics or not able to go to restaurants, go on vacation, all of those sorts of things. So, I mean, that's the impact right now with school districts. And, you know, in 2025, hopefully things will get better. The interest rates dropping. You know, the joke I made with the superintendent years ago, he said, when's the best time to do a survey for a November election? I said the Monday before the Tuesday. Unfortunately, you can't do any planning. You actually have to call the question 75 days before and all of those sorts of things. But surveys are snapshots in time. To go back with a strategic plan, if there's a you know, as we write the questions to provide reasoning for the funding request, you know, we could work on that, absolutely. But I mean, I mean, there was one district about 6 years ago, you know, that did a strategic plan. The pandemic came along. The strategic plan really has nothing in play anymore.
So now's not a good time to do a survey.
What's that?
Now is not a good time to do a survey out of your mouth.
What I said?
I just thought I heard you say that now is not a good time to do a survey for success.
Maybe it's not a good time for a referendum.
No, it's not. It's not a good time to do referendum. To have an accurate snapshot of what's going to happen on election day. Surveys are not predictive; they're informative.
So you say no. I mean, you say then your survey comes out as No, it's not a good time.
I've told many districts in the past 18 months, you don't have a chance of passing.
So what's your success rate on your passage of surveys?
Overall, 91%.
My last question right now would be, what's your cost for us?
Well, if you just do one survey, it would be not to exceed 24,000. And with that, I would recommend a 400 sample, 400 samples plus or minus 5% in 95 out of 100 cases. Margin of error is determined by the size of the sample, not the percent of the population. So a 400 in the Brainerd School District or a 400 in the state of Minnesota is plus or minus 5%. Why do we say 400? Because my costs are driven by two factors: how many questions we ask and how many people. And so to go from plus or minus 5% to plus or minus 4%, you have to talk to 625 people. Well, that increases cost by 50%. Now, I have a conscience. There's no way I could tell you that it's worth 50% more for a point in the margin of error. It's not worth it. There are instances to increase the sample size, not for the margin of error, but a brush fire the shorter survey next year, if you were to do that to test the specific package, I might suggest going to 500 or 625, not for the margin of error, but because you get to look at likely voters. This year, it doesn't matter. Likely voters it's going to be 65 to 80% in Minnesota. So in a 400 sample, we'll have over 300 likely voters. But in an off-year election, it can be 20%. You know, one district that turnout was 8% last fall. Which, I mean, even teachers didn't come out, and it was an operating levy. And so, you know, if you do a 625 and you have 30% turnout, you're going to have 200, which is a large enough cell size to really understand, okay, where are likely voters at versus the community as a whole.
24K covers everything?
Yeah, all inclusive. Yeah, I'm not a lawyer. I don't charge by the hour.
Thank you.
You want to do one?
No, too much work.
I've got some questions.
Director
Do you
Donlin?
survey businesses at all, or is it just individuals?
For the purpose of a school district survey, just businesses. Or I'm sorry, just residents. I survey businesses for cities, business owners and managers.
How do you get the cell phone numbers? I'm just being curious.
It's, people always talk about, you know, all the information out there. It is out there. I mean, there are incredible databases.
Buy it.
What's that?
You buy them.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Well, so what would it cost for the two surveys? Because it sounds to me like the two surveys is the way to go.
The second survey, like I said, I think in the proposal.
You said the one survey is 24.
24. The second one, it's shorter, but it's more people. And so I think I said not to exceed 18,000 for that.
In addition to the 20.
Right.
So we know it's not a good time, but we don't know that. But it doesn't sound like a great time to trying to do an operating levy.
I've told more people, I've told more people this year, you have a chance of success, but it's the presidential year, which, you know, this is my 8th presidential rodeo in doing this, and I try to never recommend a school district going during a presidential year. The issue this year is the presidential race and the economy. Last year, it was the economy much more so. And so, you know, the fall or the winter of 23, I probably recommended to about a quarter of the clients to say you have to wait. If you don't wait, you have to make significant cutbacks in what the funding request is. Where we are right now, and it really has not changed over the last 2 years, people will support have-to-haves. They're not willing to support nice-to-haves. It's the recession of 2008, 2009. Where basically I don't think it was, the only thing that passed at that time was bond referendums for deferred maintenance, safety and security, and operating levy renewals. Folks, it's kind of where we're at now. In making the assessment on what drives people to support, it's absolutely possible. I mean, if you've made significant cuts, that will show folks that the need is there. People have to understand there's logical consequences. If you don't share the logical consequences with the voter, you're giving them a reason not to support something at this point in time.
What kind of information comes out of the survey? Is it all just about how much they'd spend or this or that? Or do you get a feel for how much the community's backing this? I mean,
Yeah.
our Peter told us that, you get a ton of great information out of this survey. What people are happy with, what they're excited about, what they're disappointed in, what we need to do better at. I mean, is that?
Absolutely.
I see a lot of value in that side of it.
Yeah, it really is a holistic approach, look at the district. There are those that it's only about the question. It's only about what the patient's injury is.
Who decides what's gonna be in the survey?
It's a back and forth process.
Between the superintendent and you?
So whoever in the school district, I've worked with boards, administrations, both, what have you. It's all at the discretion of the decision makers.
So do you recommend this is what I would do for your 70 questions, or do we just start throwing out ideas?
Oh, I have recommendations, especially for the atmospherics. I mean, the key, what clients tell me is one of the values that we bring is with the history we have, with the database we have, is, okay, if I come in and tell you, just an important question is, does the school district spend taxpayers' money effectively and efficiently? Okay? If it comes in and 65% say yes, okay, that's interesting. But how does it compare? What does it mean? Okay, the norm right now is 57%. So you're actually doing better than the majority of school districts. And so that tells us that level of information. So on those atmospheric questions, I have recommendations because the key is the wording is the same. Typically the survey process is if you do the larger one with the atmospherics, the donut's been baked. The district, we're gonna fill in the donut hole with the specifics of what's being discussed with the funding request and communication channels and those sorts of things.
Interesting.
Mr. Chair?
Director Hyden.
When you said, Peter, you have a 91% success rate, is that doing one or is that doing two surveys?
That's over the history of the company as a whole.
Gotcha.
Yep,
So it entails both one
Yep.
and two surveys
yep, as a whole, yep.
as a whole.
The last 10 years, it seems like he said the 2 survey thing is kind of.
It has, because of the time and effort that committees have to put into with coming up what to ask for. It just, especially the superintendents would say, it would be so important for you to come in the second or third meeting of planning and say, this is where the community's at. And, we have on our survey, it's called our Let's Make a Deal question. So if you heard the district was going to have a funding request, would you support, and my phoners will pick a random starting point, and we'll set up the scale based on what the funding request would be, $20 a month. The respondent says no, how about 15? No, how about 10? Sure, I'll accept that. If they say yes to 20, how about 25? So I can come in that meeting and say, okay, the community they're willing to support $10 a month on average, okay? But then after we establish what that tolerance is, we always go through a list and say, would you support a property tax increase for this purpose? Go down the list. And we can establish what do people have high support levels for? What do they have low levels of support for? And what we know is that $10, it's not set in stone. It's not the 10 commandments coming down. There is elasticity to it. There also can be regression from it. And because it matters what's in it. I have two examples. Richfield in 2017, we did the first survey. It was about $10 a month. But we tested about 14 components for a bond referendum. The lowest level of support they had in concept was 67% for a property tax increase. Okay, that told us that you can go higher than the $10. They actually went out for $27 a month on the average house, and it passed 65-35. But Elk River 25 years ago had a question for an ice arena that actually the dollar amount came in under, but people didn't support the ice arena, and it failed. So that's why it matters what's being asked for. So, I mean, if you do hire us and I come in, I will say the same thing when I tell you the tax tolerance number. It's not set in stone. And then we can look at those components that push support higher, which hurts support right now.
Needs versus wants.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
So your success rate is dependent on the predictiveness of the data that you collect from the survey.
It really does come down to helping come up with a package that's is acceptable in the minds of the community.
Okay.
I mean, I think that that's the biggest portion. It's not, at the end of the day, you know, if we ask the question, do you support or oppose? It's interesting, but that's where I say that question's most important the Monday before the Tuesday. What's important 9 months out is where the community's at for support in order to put together and tailor the best package that has a chance of success on election day.
So just to make sure I understand this correctly, if we go out with the survey and we frame it in that sense where we say, okay, the purpose for this referendum is to provide funding to put educational assistants back in elementary classrooms and interventionists in our classrooms and things like that.
Yes.
You're saying that's the way to frame that to gauge?
Yep, individually, yep. Would you support a property tax increase? And to your point, initially worded, I wouldn't say, you know, because I've had districts say, well, let's tell them why we're doing this. No, we're not gonna make them atypical. We're gonna just say what is being.
So you have like a kind of a menu of these things and
Yes.
you find out which ones resonate and if they line up with the priorities that you actually
Exactly.
have from a budgetary perspective.
Exactly. And so, you know, a bond referendum, what's gonna lead the list in every school district is gonna be safety and security by a mile. And once again, that does not imply that, you know, because many districts will ask the question, does the district provide a safe and secure learning environment? 90 to 95% of Minnesotans say yes, their district does. If you ask, would you support a property tax increase for safety and security improvements? 80% of Minnesotans support that. Where, you know, I was doing surveys with Columbine. Sadly, Columbine, that bump for safety and security in the late 90s, it only lasted for about 18 months. What changed everything was Newtown, Connecticut and Sandy Hook. And then the Uvalde's doubled down on it. And now we're to the point now where Minnesotans are saying, we will do anything on safety and security and then deferred maintenance. Really what we're finding on the operating side right now, the number one thing people are willing to support is to avoid future budget cuts.
Director Ward?
So, and you say 91% success rate. Tell us, if you could, Peter, your sampling of, what's the size of the districts that you've been 91% successful in? How can you break that down for us, size of districts? Edina versus Brainerd, Wayzata versus Crosby. Do you have any data on that?
I could probably weed through and try to assign, yeah, I mean, we've worked with every size. You know, I say, you know, on bond referendums, I've worked on $500,000 bond referendums. I worked on $495 million in Rosemont, Apple Valley, Egan. You know, it's all across the board. It's across, you know, we primarily do Minnesota, do a fair amount of work in Wisconsin, simply because I don't like business travel.
So if we wanted to, you could get us the data on that question or that,
Yeah, I probably could sort the database, yeah.
because not only size, but location of districts also make a difference within the state of Minnesota. Central Minnesota up to northern Minnesota, there's a huge difference from central on down.
Yeah, there's really, it's 7-county metro and greater Minnesota. As you look at success rates, I mean, it's much harder to have districts have a, just because simply the tax impact and the tax base.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And seasonal rec property that's allowed.
That's all of those things.
So that's
Oh,
my question.
and the ag to farm credit in southern
farm.
Minnesota. You know, that, where they put that in 17, 18, that kind of helped, but yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
The big deal, I think, and you're the expert, is no matter how big your community is, they're gonna survey 400 different people.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
gonna, what he's saying is 400 is a big enough number that they can get it within 5%, so
Yeah.
I guess we have to trust that you know what you're doing. I'm sure you do. I mean, to me, 400 sounds like, oh, that's not very many.
My clients do, my
But like he
wife
said, you know, I can go to 625 and raise it 1%. So apparently it's enough, as long as you get the right demographics.
Yeah, it's like Gallup, the famous Gallup survey, you know, that kind of went away. You know, 80s, it was the Gallup survey. The Gallup survey across the United States is 1,113.
Is that what it is?
Plus or minus 3% across the entire country. If we did 1,113 here in Brainerd, it's plus or minus 3%.
But to your point, the point is the complexion and the, within that population itself, making sure it's diverse enough to give you what you need.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the key portion of it, is that it represents the community as a whole, and that it's not the self-selection that can come in. You know, I saw one survey that had, one of the mail-out surveys a few years ago, had 74% parents. The demographics of the district were 22%.
Right, so it doesn't matter.
No, that's a parent survey then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's gonna have very different. Surprisingly, the survey showed high support for the funding request.
Yeah, or shocker.
But it failed. You know, typically, any successful coalition in Minnesota in an off year is 80% support of parents. It's hard to pass anything if you don't have 8 out of 10 parents supporting.
So when do you recommend we start this process? As far as the surveys and?
When do I recommend it? I would say, I mean, you're looking at November of 25, correct? That would be, so, I would, if you're going to take the 2 survey approach, I would look probably in January to actually do the survey. That way, if there are, especially on those atmospherics, there's a long enough runway to deal with that and understand where folks are at. So, and then that way, though, you'll have the data to do the planning in the first quarter of 23. Or 23, my God, 25.
25,
I'm
yeah.
going back in time. So you can have the data to start the decision-making, because you probably, the legislature, of course, will probably screw everything up for districts by May. So that probably will be a factor in the decision-making. But I always say, you know, ideally, the best practice would be the board make the decision in April or May. The vote yes can get formed in the spring. Every communication starts with parents, because then the school ends, and Minnesotans forget, you know, we're done for 3 months. There's no communication, there's no nothing. We don't want any of that. And then when the kiddos come back after Labor Day or before Labor Day, you're gonna be voting 3 weeks later. And so all of those things need to be in place April, May. And I understand there'll be multiple districts next year that are gonna call me in July and say, okay, we finally figured out how the legislature screwed us up, and we need to do a funding request, and we may need to make the decision August 15th. That's going to happen. It's happened every biennium for 30 years. But if you do that first survey, you know, like I said, there are multiple districts already starting in November and December. So, you know, I would start the survey process. It normally takes about a month to write the survey, you know, to go back and forth with the client. So if we're looking, you know, first part of January, probably start the discussion right after Thanksgiving, so everything's ironed out before the holidays. And then that way you have data by the end of January. You have time to look at the atmospherics, understand where folks are at, but then also look at specifics as you start the planning process in Q1.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Peter? Well presented. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right, so this is in, as old business, there's an action item on here to potentially approve or move forward with one of the two proposals. Directors Ward and Dondelinger were not present at the last meeting when we had the other presentation. Director Ward, I believe you watched a recording of it.
I did.
So did I.
And based upon, I believe we all got the same communication from Superintendent Grant, he's recommending that we opt not to move forward on this tonight, but to move it to October to discuss and approve when he's back.
Well, I'm confused about the deal. Discussion and/or approval to move forward with one of the community survey proposals as presented in August and September school board meetings. Excuse me, jeez. So does that mean that we're gonna do something, we just haven't picked yet? Is that what he wants?
No,
Or
I mean, I think when it was.
just mean we just put it off till next month?
Right, I think it was originally put on the agenda to
That's
give us
fine.
the option to do that if
I'll
we
make a
choose to
motion
do
that we
that.
put this off till next month and get to talk to Superintendent Grant.
Second, if we need that.
Well, it can go either way, we can go with what you just did, or no motion means we don't do anything with it and it gets kicked down like what we did with Sourcewell last month.
Just table it.
Oh, I get you.
But the motion is valid. So we can go forward with that. So we have a motion from Director Dondelinger to postpone or table the further discussion and selection of a vendor until the October meeting. And then we have a second from Director Ward on that motion. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will carry this over to next month's board meeting agenda. There's no specific shot clock other than, as he mentioned, we really
Get
have
moving by
January.
Thanksgiving.
That we probably have to do something, but. All right, so next up, we have Carrie Ross, kind of part two of the Sourcewell partnership, Sourcewell contract for the, excuse me, for the 24-25 school year.
Chair Boyles, members of the board, just a quick overview of our current partnership with Sourcewell to give you some context for this contract. We've partnered with Sourcewell for several years. They provide training and consulting services for us. We use them for educator services and student services. They are well respected in our region and across the state as one of our 9 service cooperatives that support regional schools. There's been some recent reconfiguration, and they're also our local partner for MDE initiatives too. So for example, they recently started a READ Act network for our literacy leads across the region where they can learn together and collaborate and do wonderful things without having to travel all the way to St. Paul. I'm just going to highlight a few quick 7 or 8 things that we are currently engaged in with Sourcewell, there is a larger menu of things for us to choose from. These are the things that might be of most interest. We get a lot of career specialist support from Sourcewell. Meteor is a curriculum that is used at our BLC. Planetarium is also used by a variety of schools across our region. And it is a great way to showcase Forest View Middle School and the programs we have to offer there. You might have heard of Tech Mobile. That's a program we've used previously. It just recently changed its name to Stepbound, which is a great partner with helping kids understand all the connections in STEM fields and equipment and project-based learning activities and support for our teachers to do that. We also have a vast network of options for our educators to participate in learning with colleagues. As I mentioned, across the region, the READACT network, we also have district nurses and our English language learner staff and our building principals that participate in networks. And because of our partnership with Sourcewell, we get a 90% discount when our staff participates in training on site at Sourcewell. And Sourcewell also provides customized support here. They are currently working with us and groups of teachers here in our district, so our teachers don't have to travel anywhere in math, science, CTE, and world language. They also fund provide small project funding for things that we do that are innovative projects. It was very exciting. And we are asking for approval of our 24-25 contract.
So who else is available to do this kind of work
There isn't anybody else in the region.
in the region? But who else is available that does this kind of work? I don't care if it's nationwide. I mean, what difference does it make? Just cost?
Yeah, we could certainly contract with other people outside of our region. It certainly wouldn't be very convenient for our educators, especially if they had to travel to professional learning or engage in some of the programs. It would not be convenient for our kids to participate in Students of Character and some of the other programs that we have. So if we wanted to continue to provide those student level programs, we would be out of options. There just isn't anybody else.
So basically, whatever Sourcewell says, which is a state, Sourcewell is a state of Minnesota local government agency and service cooperative. So whatever they say is what we're teaching our kids.
No, not necessarily.
Well, if I go through here, I see that we have all these programs that we're signing up for. We have a Sourcewell district partner assigned to assist district in program planning and alignment of services to strategic plan. I mean, it just doesn't end. You just go through here and there's just, I mean, I feel as though they have it awfully strong. They're the 5th and 6th grade curriculum, it utilizes games, students, then they have the 7th and 8th grade curriculum. You know, like you talked about that Meteor, well, it is Meteor, yeah. What is the deal with the alternative mode to obtain credits for advancing through school salary schedules instead of enrolling in graduate credits? I thought you had to take the graduate credits to move up. What is this program, or do we not do that here?
We don't do that one.
Okay, so this stuff they list in here, some of it we're not doing?
Many of the things that are listed in that contract are options for us.
So how do we know which ones we have?
The ones that I highlighted for you right here, Mr. Dondelinger, are the ones that we are subscribing to this year. These 8.
Okay. Makes me feel better. The $75 one-time administrative fee for the year, that's $75 for the whole year? Or is it $75,000 a student?
For the whole year, one time, $75.
Oh geez, why is that even in there? But there are other options out there, they're just not this inexpensive.
Correct, this is a very good value for our taxpayer money.
Okay.
Director Ross, the career specialist, I thought we have career people in our school district, and I know last year I was given this book, I think,
Catalog, yeah,
the catalog, I mean, it looked like,
college catalog.
yeah, and it had all these classes for how kids can pick out their career or what they're interested in. So what does Sourcewell do to enhance that, or I guess is my question?
Yeah, so the career specialist that works with our staff coordinates with teachers and with students to help identify those pathways that our students are most interested in, and helps kind of make sure that we have programming in place so that students are ready for those employment options or college pathways, or that they can access some experiences in the community that help them make those decisions about what career pathway they want to pursue.
So do we do that, do we meet with these people from Sourcewell before we come out with this online catalog or
It
this
is the
catalog?
same- It is the same group. They work collaboratively
Okay.
all the time. It's not different.
Sourcewell pays for the, partially pays for the
Pays for the salary. Yep.
of our career leader.
Career people or
yeah,
whatever,
or
yeah.
career people in the district.
Okay.
So because of our relationship with
Right.
Sourcewell,
Okay.
they help fund some of those positions.
So it's not different. It just augments what we can do
Okay.
on our own.
I guess that was my biggest question is,
Yep.
you know, where does it fit in and whatnot, so.
Yep.
So these are the key things that we work with them on.
Yeah, these are the student-focused options, and then these are the educator-focused.
Now, as far as professional development and the PLCs and all this other good stuff in ACOM, how does that all fit in?
Well, again, there's a big catalog.
Uh-huh.
Educators can choose what they would like to participate in. There's a wide variety of options. Let's say there is an educator in Brainerd that would like to go to the summit that Sourcewell has every summer.
Okay.
And let's say it cost $100. It would only cost our district staff $10 to go, because we only pay 90%.
Okay.
And I didn't get as deep into the agreement as Director Dondelinger did. Is all of our sort of purchasing arrangements through them included in the same contract, or this is just for these services?
This is just for the education services.
Because there are other relationships with Sourcewell where we're using them as a purchasing cooperative, for lack of a better way to put it.
Correct.
Which gives us buying power to purchase certain things for the district. In turn, also, Sourcewell reinvests, because they're a nonprofit.
Right.
They reinvest dollars back into the districts in our region. One glittering example would be, I'll get the number wrong, but it was several $1 million that were given to our school district to outfit the LEC.
5.
I think it was
5 million.
That was a lot, yeah.
So we'll say $5 million. So, I mean, this is just one sort of leg of a stool of our relationship with Sourcewell.
Correct.
The planetarium, Mr. Chair, planetarium that we have basically is because of Sourcewell.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Pretty neat stuff.
yeah.
And I think they donated over $1 million for that.
Oh, big-
It's 100,000 a year or something, yeah, it's
Big deal.
considerable.
Yeah.
They donated our tax dollars.
So so when I go back in here to Sourcewell sponsored trainings and Sourcewell school-based professional development, is that stuff that we take advantage of?
We do, and right now we are working with several of their specialists to help guide learning of our secondary teachers primarily in areas of science and math and CTE and world languages. So they're meeting with them multiple times a year. They're coming here to meet with our teachers to help them on curriculum development and resource alignment. Pretty important stuff.
I would say they're experts in their field.
Absolutely, they are experts.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. The thing that concerns me about them is, and I'm not saying we're not gonna approve this, like I'll vote for this today, but I want to make sure, here's what I don't like, okay? Is we've hired you, right? Or Heidi did, and we've got Peter, and we're the board. They're supposed to steer the ship, right? But Sourcewell, Education Solutions Team, is gonna support you with developing and implementing standard-based teaching and learning. Whose standards? Possible
Academic
areas
Standards for the state of Minnesota.
for the state of Minnesota.
State of Minnesota academic standards.
So they're not doing very well. I'm not trying to be mean. you and I have talked about it.
We have.
We're less than, not one grade's reading at grade level, half the kids, right? So why do we want to keep pushing their ideas? Why aren't we getting creative and maybe a little more aggressive and starting to do our own stuff? You know, standards analysis, alignment align with what the state wants. Effective instructional strategies, instructional unit design and delivery, high quality assessment, resource selection. Why are they selecting our resources? You know, that's why we have school boards. It's because we should be hiring people like you that have, you know, so we can direct, kind of give you an idea what we're looking for. And this is what scares me about these outside companies that come in and do this stuff. And they're basically bribing us with all their money that they give us to make sure that we stay in line and do what the state wants, because the state is in charge of Sourcewell, which is kind of training all of our people. And our numbers continue to dwindle, not us alone, I understand. It's not just us, but it's like, I mean, who's Jackie Brinkman? We got the Catalyst approach. Catalyst is a set of beliefs and strategies to support classroom management and school culture. I mean, it's like, John, you've talked about the school culture and the classroom stuff for how long? Well, where's it coming from? I mean, I'm just concerned, you know, that we should see what else is out there before we just dive in. I mean, Peter's on board with this. Carrie, obviously you are. You're both know way more about education than I do. But I do notice trends, and we're trending in a certain direction, and the whole state's doing it. And there's 9 of these NGOs that are probably running 90% of the schools? 100%? 20% of the schools?
They probably work with 20% of the schools across.
So maybe we should go to the 80% side and see if we can make a difference.
Well, to be clear, Mr. Underlinger, they don't choose our resources, they don't guide our work. We tell them what we need from them, and our district advisory committee approves any recommendations for resources we bring to you. It is not limited to what Sourcewell recommends.
So the Marzano Resources High Reliable Schools is a program.
Not something we do.
It isn't?
Nope.
I just asked if we do these things.
We do some of those things in there, not
Well,
all of them.
I'll tell you what would make this a lot easier for us in the future, and I wouldn't mind just having it if someone has time to do it, just to go through and get rid of everything that we don't do, and just give me the list anyways of what we do.
Can we get a copy of that?
Oh, it's in your deal.
It's in your packet.
That's where I got this from, it's in the
No,
packet.
I'm talking about the student-focused programs.
It's the
That's
slide
those-
thing.
those
next
two
one.
slides.
The Google Doc is in the.
It's in your, there's two things, Ran. The top one is this, and the bottom one is this contract. And I just started snipping through this thing, and I'm just not impressed with the direction the state's going with education. I'm happy about the READ Act, and maybe that's to make some big improvements, and you seem like you're excited about it too. So hopefully that'll make a difference, but it seems to me like if you're failing, and I'm not saying we're failing, but if the state is continually on a downward trend, why do we want to be in bed with them? So, that's my 2 bits. I know Sourcewell does a lot of nice things for us, and I sometimes wonder how. It's not the 1%.
I know I'm technology challenged, but I only see one document.
Okay, I'll find it for you later, Randy.
Okay?
I
Are
got
you in the
covered.
agenda?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Sourcewell partnerships.
Oh, I see you got the 2
Approval of
deals.
the contract.
You got the top one, and then you got number 2.
What's in your board memo is the exact same language, it's just on slides to make it look pretty for our presentation here this evening.
Got it. You always help me, thank you.
Happy
Is
to
that
help.
Peter dishing out on a hard one like this? Dirty dog.
Anything else I can do?
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of the Sourcewell contract for 24-25 school year as presented.
I'll second.
So we have a motion from Director Ward with a second from Director Brecken. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll move along to the new business portion of our evening. We will start out with Marcy, who's always so excited to come up to the microphone, with the preliminary 2024 payable 2025 proposed tax levy at maximum.
Okay. Okay, so in your board packet is a more detailed memo. This is just a synopsis. The presentation is a synopsis, but then the second line on the board memo is more detailed, just a FYI. So the initial report was out on September 6th, which is why we had a later board meeting. That's just such a tight turnaround. If we would have had a board meeting on the 9th, I would have barely even had a chance to review it. So the first draft was put out on the 6th. We reviewed this at the Finance Committee it was as of September 17th, and it's also being presented tonight. The runs are almost daily put out by MDE, so later on I'll talk about what we're currently at. But as of right now, we're talking about 6.84%. Mid-November, the county will mail out the proposed tax statements, and then December 9th, we'll have a public hearing, and that's where we can certify the final levy. So the proposed tax levy sets taxes payable in 2025, and then we actually recognize the revenue in 25-26. So we're not like counties or cities where they are actually levying for the year that the taxes are payable. The estimated increase as of September 17th was 6.84%. Many of the levy limits are based on enrollment, so I put a little snapshot of what the preliminary enrollment is for 23-24, and then also the estimated amounts for 24-25 and 25-26. And that's based on the enrollment model that we use from Ehlers. Just an FYI there.
What's the difference between the ADMs and the adjusted pupil units?
So
I know the ADMs are 1.2.
Yep, that's the adjusted.
That's the adjusted.
Yep.
So it takes us up a little over 10%.
So if you look at adjusted, that's how many days they were here, and then adjusted pupil units then is multiplying it by that 1 and 1.2.
Oh, another year of this and I'll have her down.
Yeah, you will. So levy by fund, there was a shift.
Yeah, maybe.
We'll throw something new at them. There was a shift in funds this year due to the reduction in the debt service payments. So last year in the general fund, it took up about 35% of the levy. This year we're looking at 47%, and that's with the addition of the alt facilities funding. So we're dropping debt service payments and then adding the alt facilities fundings, and those are in different funds. The community service saw no change. It was 2% last year, it's 2% this year. And then the debt service, as I said, it went from 63%, this year it's 51%. So this is just a history of the levy by fund in the last 10 years. The 5-year average is 3.62%, 10-year average is 4.42%. And then if you were to take out the 2019 year, that's Blueprint 181, when we had that large increase of 19.42, the 9-year average would be 2.75%. So just a history of what our increases were the past few years. Then this is a breakdown of what is in the general fund. So it goes into detail of, for example, safe schools, operating capital, all of those have components on the levy. And it is up the 43.87% due to the addition of the alt facilities funding. And you'll see that in the long-term facilities unequalized line. It goes from about 1 million to 4.5 million.
So one thing is it okay if I ask a question or make a little statement?
Yeah.
I think it's important that we make it clear that the school's budget didn't go up 44%. This is just the money that's brought in locally, which is what percent of our income?
It's only like 12.
12%? The whole school didn't go up 45% in a year.
And I'm glad you pointed that out because that line item is specific to our buildings. We can't use that for operational costs.
Right.
And on the next page is the other categories, or funds, I should say. Community service went up 7.8%, and that was due to an increase in the adjusted net tax capacity. Nothing that we do, that's all on the county side when it comes to market values and tax, all that is done at the county side. Debt service went down the 13.85% due to the decrease in the debt payments. So So overall, it's the 6.84 at the very bottom. And then this is just our outstanding debt service. So overall principal is about 191 million. Last year it was 198 million. So we continue to pay off some of our debt and they go through the year 2044. So if we don't issue any new debt, that'll continue just to keep moving up every single year. So for 2024, the market value increase is not yet known. That happens every year. It'll come out with the November statements. Referendum market value excludes certain properties, the largest being ag and seasonal rec. So the first one is market values, and then the next one is referendum market value, meaning what is the market values for an operating referendum. And then the next one is the net tax capacity. So the taxable market value is broken down by classifications, i.e. your property, residential, commercial, and that's the final classification is net tax capacity. So I just kind of have you can see the last couple of years, we've really seen some increases in our market values. And I'm sure the residents would also agree.
Yep.
This one is a new information for this year. I did ask Ellers if they could give a breakout of what it would mean for residential, commercial with that 6.84%. So you can review that if you're wondering, okay, if I'm a homeowner with a $300,000 home, what would that mean? And this is based on an estimate of 2% change in market value. We won't know that until next month. And then it's also, there is an increase for a higher increase for commercial and seasonal when you look at this. And that's because it's shifting from debt service to the general fund. And it's broken out in different classes when it makes that shift.
And those numbers are per month?
That's for the year.
So $1 million building only pays $4,700 in taxes?
The change, so
Yeah.
the change.
But, so the 219, well, that's for annual, I get you.
Yep.
Doesn't make any sense.
And this is on top of what they're already paying. This is the increase.
Correct.
Gotcha.
This is what the school district portion is.
Correct.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yes. This is not the whole
Gotcha.
statement.
Well, with the elimination of the debt services, doesn't that neutralize some of that, or how does that work?
It does, but the taxing of it is different. And
Okay.
so if we had made no changes, kept our levy the same, and we were looking at a 6.84%, you'd see more of the chart be consistent of the increase. But since we're shifting from debt service to the general fund, it changes the components of the taxpayers. And so that's why the commercial and the seasonal get a little bit more.
It's been a couple of years since I've been on finance, I forgot that piece.
Yeah. It's super exciting. So the administrative recommendation is to approve the tax levy at the maximum, and that's because there still are adjustments being made. So for example, today's report, it was at 6.97%. So if we approve it at the maximum, those adjustments can continue to be made, and then we'll come back in December and have the public hearing and make the final certification.
Right, so this doesn't set it, it just gives us the authority to go to that maximum in December, correct?
Exactly.
And what was that percent again? 6.9, you said?
So the whole presentation was on 6.84. Currently, as of today, it's 6.97.
Okay, so the recommendation is?
To approve it at the maximum. We don't say a percent because tomorrow it could go down as well. Yeah.
And so the other deal is that we can go down.
Right.
But if we go down now, we can't go back up.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So we just need to have that cushion, I think. Not proud of it.
Well, I mean,
Gonna do.
Directors Ward and Donnelly, your finance committee, what other budget items do we have that you found that we can sacrifice for this? If we don't want to do it? I know it's been a 2-year process for you looking through it, I'm still trying to find
That's
that.
a 6-person question,
I know,
not 2-person question.
yeah.
Maybe even more than 6.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Well, the reason I ask it is just as you think about it in terms of public perception of the budget as a whole, right? The constant idea that there's some $10 million wasteful spending fund that we're just, you know, paying for
that's
snow
legit.
cones or something. And the reality is it isn't working like that. Is that fair to say?
I think so. I mean, something's gonna have to be done, but we need to have the leeway to be able to make as minimum cuts as we can. We already have a lot of frustrated parents and teachers about some class sizes and some of the grades and
Yep.
what else can we do?
I don't know. Well, we'll know in May because we're gonna have to make those decisions. Because even if we chose to go forward with a referendum, and even if the referendum passed, that money is not coming for 2 years.
Right. It'll be, I just think we need the leeway, and then hopefully in the next 90 days, we can maybe find some ways to skinny that down and not be going for that big of a increase.
And I would
I mean, the
agree
big
with
part
that.
about the increase is the increase in property values, so it hasn't been quite so bad on our taxpayers, but it still doesn't play real well. You know what's interesting? Would you wanna talk to these guys about the CARES money though?
I have it in my financial report later.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's pretty interesting.
yes. And we had a robust discussion, you know, about the levy, at the finance, and Director Donlinger is absolutely correct, is that right now we just have to have some leeway. Doesn't matter what other governmental agencies have or whatever, it's just, we need that right now.
Okay, I think that concludes your presentation, does it not?
Yes, thank you.
So you need a motion.
We do.
I'll move it. I'll move that we, accept, Marcy's proposal of 6.84 or 6.9?
Just
Maximum.
Just the maximum.
Maximum, that's right,
Changes every
okay,
day.
yep, that's right.
Hopefully they'll come down.
Right, so we have a motion fittingly from our two finance leads, Director Ward with the motion and Director Dondelinger with the second. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up is the School Board AFS CME Secretarial Clerical Union Contract for the 24 through 26 school years. And here comes our newest and fanciest addition to the school district. Would you just super quick introduce yourself before you start? I think it's your first time up in the fun chair, isn't it?
Yes, this is a fun chair. Well, good evening. My name is Ali Xiong, and I'm the new Director of Human Resource.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. School Board Chair Boyles, Director of School Ross, members of the school board, thank you for granting me this time. Tonight, I will be speaking on the ratification of the ASME Secretarial Clerical Contract. But before I do that, let me make a remark. I want you to know that it's been a privilege to be a warrior. I've met so many amazing people whose heart are in the right place. So this is a right place to be. However, I do want to share that my daughter arrived safely back to New York City last night, and she called me and said, "Dad, I'm back home in New York City safely." And we started talking, and then she said, "Dad, do you know how to make an idiot say how?" And I said, "How?" So my confidence is a little bit shaken. Anyway, she also reminded me that I am so privileged to be in the field of education and working with educators who are changing lives every day. And I want you to know that our secretarial group are individuals who are also changing lives every day. I do have a presentation, I will go to that. So we have. There it is. So I just want to say that Brainerd Public School and its employee labor group share common goals of enhancing the educational experience and achievement of our students. Our employees consistently go above and beyond so that our students can go above and beyond every day. The district is dedicated to securing fair contracts that align our values, resources, support our employees, and ultimately contribute to our students' success. How we succeed together? We do it by putting student first. Student needs and growth drive our decisions and actions. We do it through excellence, high expectations for all with everything we do. The third is responsible. Individually and collectively, we are good stewards of our resources. Fourth, collaboration, working together for common goals. And the fifth is integrity, that we are being honest and authentic in every interactions that we have. Oh, that looks different. I don't know what happened there. That looks like 1980. Brainerd Public School and the ASME Secretarial Clerical Union have reached tentative agreement on the contract effective July 1, 2024 through June 30, 2026. A huge thank you to the following district leaders: Jennifer Simata and her team, and Angie Bennett and her team. So the main changes to the ASME Secretarial Clerical Union contract is as follows. 1, salary adjustment. For the year 2024 and 2025, there will be a 3% increase in wage scale. For the following year in 2025-2026, a 2% increase in wage scale. And introduction of step increase eligibility based on hire date. The second change is increase in 403B district match. The fourth change is revised vacation schedule, decreased carryover amount. And the fifth is language cleanup and inclusion of ESST and paid, see if I can read it here. Can't read on my copy either, so.
Medical leave.
Yeah, medical
language,
leave.
And
And just-
clarification of position elimination, the changes protocol.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And
Ours are fine.
Yeah, good. And ESST stands for, just so that the audience know what that is earn sick and save time. Lots of acronyms to learn in the district. So the final copy of the contracts are in your school board packet. These changes are within budget. So tonight, we are asking school board for final approval.
And just so you know, every time somebody does their first presentation, we make sure the PowerPoints go funky.
Well, I appreciate the consistency.
We also asked that you bring donuts. Did you bring donuts tonight? Oh, never mind.
I fail on that.
Can you remind me how the step increase eligibility based on hire date, how did that change? I mean, we were involved in it, but there were so many moving parts in this deal. I just don't remember.
Yeah, so I'm sort of the messenger. I wasn't involved, and so.
I
it's
think it was a deal where if you were hired like in January, you didn't qualify for that till July 1st, where now if we hired you in January, you'd get credit for the 6 months, I believe is what we did. Pretty sure that's what it was.
Good, my confidence just went up. Thank you.
I was paying attention once in a while.
Now, the steps, is it similar to the regular teacher contract where it's a longevity type thing? Okay, I'm assuming that's what it was, I just wanted to verify. Okay.
So the goal is more consistency.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, obviously, there's no lanes because there's not an educational requirement to the component? Okay.
Yeah, make a motion.
Second. Oh, go ahead.
No, you were part of the
Yeah.
discussion, go ahead.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Director Dondlinger to approve the contract as presented with a second from Director Ward. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Ali.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
And I believe, does that not close out our list of contracts for this year?
believe
That was
that's
This was the
true.
last one we had to,
Yeah,
we
I
had to
believe
finish
that's
up.
true.
All right, next up is the discussion and approval on having the Student Support Services Committee explore the creation of a mental health task force. So this was kind of added on Friday morning to the agenda. I think the idea here was based on one of the public comments we had tonight as well, to, similar to how we did an equity task force, to take a look at marshaling, or at least kicking the idea around down at the committee. And Director Brecken, I think that's your world? And Director Spear is on that committee with you as well, if I remember correctly, right? So the idea was to perhaps, put that on your next agenda and begin a process of talking about how we can do something more, without actually, at least in the early stages, doing specific board action per se, but maybe have some recommendations on some different avenues that we can go down to kind of explore doing some of these things with combination of community resources and our time and things like that. So the idea is to open the table for discussion on this before we were to take any action on it. Director Heidman.
Just a question. I think I raised this question. I can't remember how long ago it was, but understand that mental health is an issue. We all know it. I guess my question was, why? Why does it keep increasing? What's going on? Is it the water? Is it the air? I don't know. But it doesn't seem to be going down. And it's an issue. There's no question about it. And I just was wondering if anybody had a thought, or why it continues to be such an issue that continues to keep going up. Doesn't go down.
I think the societal change, Mr. Chair, I think societal changes have driven lots of impact on mental health. Just societal changes. It's, it's not unlike anything that has made a difference or an impact in previous generations. I don't think anybody can point, if any of us had that answer, we wouldn't be here, number one.
No, you're right, but
And
I just thought somebody might have.
it's a combination of things, in my opinion. The need is great, and we shouldn't, in my opinion, we shouldn't just say, well, it's because of. We need to kind of try to find some solutions as best as we can. And staying within the fiscal responsibilities of the budget and things as such or whatever.
I think you said a lot right there. It's not that much different from previous generations.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, I wasn't around, or I was little. I remember the day that Vietnam ended. I was in Nisswa School of Music class. I think maybe the way we're handling it, I think that, and I see there's a policy update coming up. If you read, I've been reading a lot about this, is these telephones are making a whole, they call it the anxious generation. They really became mainstream in 2015. They came out like in 2008, 2010, but it was pretty much just high school kids because parents weren't gonna pay, and we didn't have Wi-Fi in all the schools and all the different things now. And, Director Brecken told us about a substitute thing she did in a different school district where they geo-fenced her class, and in 1 hour they had 262 texts and Snapchats and all these things. So I don't think that's doing any favors, but once again, like John said, I don't think it's one thing. But I think that if we can clean that up, you might see it get a lot better. There's so much pressure. There's all of this shaming going on online, bullying going on online. Everybody's got it made. Our survey guy said, have you ever heard anybody say that they had a good dinner? No, it's either terrible or it's the greatest thing ever. You should be jealous because you're not here. And that's what these children are living through. And no matter how good they have it or don't have it, someone's always got it better. And they're wondering why it's not them. And I think it's tough on them. And I hope that we can find a compromise that we can maybe start to clean up this internet stuff and maybe really take a load off their backs. I really hope. I don't think it's the magic wand, but boy, if it could help it out 25% or something, I think it will. I've been reading about these phones, and they just make these kids anxious, and they're nervous to wake up in the morning because who knows what they said about them, and it's just terrible how much they're getting kicked around on those telephones. So hopefully that can help, and I don't know.
Yeah, we'll likely get an update in October on where we're at with the cell phone stuff. We talked about that on Thursday when we set the agenda, but we really had only had 12 days of school. So trying to quantify how that's going at the high school felt premature
Gotcha.
from our perspective.
But you guys are still working on a policy for the first of the year?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll
based on the
talk about-
feedback we get and whatever. I mean, that's gonna be on the October agenda.
Yeah.
We'll be, looking at that. We may choose, again, the overarching goal specific to cell phone policy is to make sure that when every child leaves for winter break, that they know what policy they're coming back to before they leave, if there is even a change.
It's amazing, cigarettes were an addictive thing. All these things are addictive things, or tobacco, I guess. It's not just cigarettes, it's everything. And then to watch these telephones, just go to Grizzlies, and there'll be two couples, a couple there, or two couples there, or a couple and their children, and all four of them are sitting there like this. They don't even talk to each other, And I think that from what I've heard about these other school districts, and a lot of school districts are doing this, all of a sudden the lunchroom's noisy again, the hallways are noisy. Maybe it give you a break from sitting around feeling sorry for thinking about yourself all day long, where you actually got caught up in some fun in the hallway and you maybe even got yourself in a little trouble. I mean, it might be good for you. I'm not
Well, I
sure.
mean, I don't think there's any problem with consistency or unanimity on this board about our desire to tackle that, right?
It's a
The
tough
question
deal.
is the practical element of the feasibility of tackling it, to what extent, which we're waiting for a little more data for, but like I said, I don't personally don't have a conclusion, but I was thinking when we were talking about this, since Director Brecken sits on the equity task force and on the student services thing, there's a little bit of this work that's been done over in the equity world, because we looked at it through the lens over there of just broader student safety. Because that's really the majority of the work that the equity task force has been doing really for the last 3 years, is really just not really looking at anything through a very specific lens, but looking at what are the general pressures on our entire student body, and how do we deal with bullying? How do we deal with, all of those other issues? So I think Director Brecken would be uniquely qualified to, utilize that committee to maybe pull that out from under equity and bring it over into its own entity, where we could, dovetail it with some of these other things that we're doing, right? Because we've got, in my mind, it's a stair-step approach that's got to be dealt with. First is attendance. You've talked about this way more than anybody else has, and you're extraordinarily accurate. We have a huge attendance problem in all school districts across the nation. It's since the pandemic, period. Okay, so we don't have them here. How do you teach them when they're not here? They get here. Then we have behavioral issues. Some of those behavioral issues are because they weren't here. Some of those behavioral issues are because they're dealing with mental health issues. And so we have to determine what role does the school district play in that. Because I think there are a lot of differing opinions on what that looks like. So if you can solve some of those things, you get the kids here, you get their mental state and their behavior cleaned up. Now, all of a sudden, you have a chance for things like test scores to go up because the learning environment is stabilized. They're all connected. You can't disconnect
All
one of those
connected.
pieces from the
Because
others.
if they got better test scores, maybe they wouldn't be quite so unruly in school, maybe they wouldn't mind coming.
Yep.
Because it'd be a little more fun for them.
Yeah, positive.
I think the other thing too is that we have to look at what kinds of programs or initiatives that we can, or resources that we can support that teach pro-social skills, that teach digital citizenship, that address social and emotional health of our students. Now, these are all buzzwords, and that promote just students' academic, social, emotional, behavioral successes. So we need to constantly be looking at, within the confines of our budget, what can we do to continue to support the mental health needs of our students?
Budget's so beat up.
And yeah, I mean, it would be great if we had more resources within the schools to support kids' mental health, because it is an issue.
I've been reading some stuff about, there's some experts coming out that are saying that it's turned into such a buzzword that when you work with a lot of these children that have had traumatic things, you know a lot about this, I'm sure, is that if you came to school every day and you had this terrible traumatic problem, and I asked you how you're feeling today, and if you're feeling better, and I keep bringing it up, it's almost dragging them back into the mud. And so there's so much talk about it, and it's everywhere. It's starting to become a little bit of a, you know, I must have problems too because all my friends do, so why am I the oddball? So I wanna get in the game as well. And it's almost like there's so much information about it that it's starting to backfire just a little bit, that it's talked about so much, you know, it's like,
I think there are things we can do for staff too that promote trauma-informed responses when kids are escalated.
with some training,
Mhm.
well, that might be great.
Mhm. So,
That's something we could probably afford to do.
yep.
When it's the kind of thing that, again, you know, in light of this being, you know, kind of on here in that way, is to kind of explore it in committee and then see if there's a way to marshal some resources, not necessarily district resources, but, and kind of get, you know, a lot of different elements within the community, within the mental health community, and within the school district itself to kind of align on some of the things that we can do, if there are things that we can do. It seemed logical to me to explore it.
There may be some pilot money out there through NAMI, through other health organizations that are trying to make an impact, positive impact on children's mental health.
And I can tell you that Sourcewell is a great resource for training staff to be trauma-informed in the way that they manage behaviors that would hopefully support students when they're escalated.
Well, you know, the problem with me is, you knew before you said it, I'm just a results-based guy. So we've been doing this for 20 years and everything's getting worse. And the state is doing it all over the place. And they're kind of teaching the training and how to handle this. And we're not getting the results that we should be getting. So if it was Phi-Ed or if it was the lunchroom, we would change. And maybe we have changed, but the changes don't seem to be paying off. So I'm not trying to be mean, but it's like,
I hear what you're
I
saying.
don't get it. It doesn't seem to be working. So it's like, let's just do more of the same, expect different results. Well, it never works like that. You know, we've got to change something. So I don't know what it is. I'm not a genius about this stuff, but I do know.
No disagreement with that. The only thing I would say is if you could
Something-
magically
something's not going
teleport
right.
to 5,000 other boardrooms around this country, every district is dealing with the same issues. There's
I know,
nobody
that's why
knocking this
I
out of
think
the
it's a
park.
societal deal, and I think it's just a little bit of internet action is getting pretty tough on these
But I
kids.
think some are, to your point, finding innovative and unique ways to kind of tackle it. And I think how we got to it when we started to take a deeper dive into bullying on the equity task force, what was useful was having student voices that were experiencing those exact situations come in, articulate what they were encountering. Now granted, this was high schoolers, we weren't able to do this, you know, downstream to elementary schools and things like that. But, you know, that was insightful and it allowed us to create a unique response that was more unique to the specific bullying that happens here that might not be the same as what happens in Verndale or in Wayzata. And so I think your point is really well taken that, you know, it's all well and good that we have all these, you know, sort of state-based or other resources, but we've got to really self-examine and determine what the complexion of our needs as a district are and try to address those very specifically where we can. I think that you're dead on. That's my opinion. And I think by having a committee group that looks at this, what better way to do it? Because you can employ community resources. We've got plenty of those folks. We've got all our friends at Northern Pines and all these other people and collaborative stuff that we can bring in. So in my opinion, I think it's a great place to start. I think it's important to mention that it's a start. I don't think it solves anything right away, but it's one of those things that, you know, you can't end the journey if you don't start the journey.
I'll give you a quick little example. My daughter was kind of one of the smart kids, and she went to the super hard college. Like the ACT score was 33, and their grade point average is 4.19. And I went to the president's meeting at the beginning of the school year when I was dropping her off, the baby of the family. Holy cow. Married her on Saturday off, so now I'm done with her. But anyways,
No, you're not.
okay, I'm not. The deal is that he said that, listen, you're the brightest and the best, and you're gonna flunk a test here. You're not in high school anymore. This is gonna be hard. But one of the things they made them do is take a gym class for their mental health. And they could be on the ski team, or they could be on the trap shooting deal, or they could be doing this or that, but they had to have something. And he said that basically these kids have all been the smartest kids in their schools, And all of a sudden now, you're just average. And some of them take it really hard. And, you know, maybe something that task force could look into, a little exercise, you know. We used to have to take it and get doing something, playing a game, having some fun, lifting weights, jumping rope, whatever it is, I don't know. But you know what I'm saying? It's like,
Do that in Minnesota.
Well,
did.
don't we have in some of our elementary schools, I mean, if kids are misbehaving, is it, and this, again, might be something that I'm dreaming up, or I've been told that, or whatever, but sometimes we take away their ability, kids' ability to go outside for Phi Ed. We should be encourage them, get out there and run around and burn off some, I don't.
We don't do that.
Okay, no, I mean,
Yeah.
okay, that's cool, because I agree, I mean, it's no different, academics are no different than athletics. I mean, you go to Alabama to play football, well, you're gonna get beat up once in a while. That's what happens when you're with the best of the best. I would make a motion to approve this committee. Unless, well, we can still discuss, but.
I don't know if there's more there is to discuss. I mean, we don't, Michelle's the only one that really knows a lot of stuff about this. Carrie probably does too.
That puts a little work on that committee for sure, to go build a skeleton for this thing.
And Carrie's also an integral member of the committee, so.
So this is gonna be a task force within an existing committee?
Probably, yeah, that's
Okay.
something we would look at.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Director Heidman with a second from Director Dondelinger to approve the Student Services, Support Services Committee to explore the creation of a mental health task force. And then I would say, Director Brecken, as you and Director Ross take this on, if you have any need of additional people or additional hands or eyeballs, reach out to whomever.
I think it might be interesting to invite Andrew Mendez to come and speak to our group.
Director Heidman?
Just one last comment about cell phones data. From what I've been told, things seem to be going in the right direction. But we don't have enough data really to say anything, but it seems that things are on the upswing, which was good to hear.
Well, I think what we can uniformly say, 13 days, 14 days in now.
15.
15 days in, is there's perhaps less pushback than we might have anticipated.
That is a correct statement.
Right? In terms of, I mean, that's anecdotal still, but it's a
But
promising sign.
It's starting to almost be like it's really taken off. I mean, it's like.
Well, I think the other thing that benefited was that this body got behind it early on and got the messaging out so that people understood what they were coming back to school. It wasn't like a surprise gotcha thing where people showed up.
I mean, I think there's up to 17 states now that they've just passed it as state law. And I sent you guys quite a few school districts that are pulling the pin on it. And that's just what people are sending me from me talking about it. You know, it's not like I've been researching, trying to find those schools. I just told a few people about it and they're just like sending me stuff from out of town.
I think the only definitive data piece that's missing, I mean, like there's no data counter to the idea that limiting cell phone use in schools is harming or helping this in educational environment.
Right.
There isn't another study out there going, actually, it's improving it over here. It isn't, that doesn't exist. I think the fundamental argument that's forming is how much? Do you ban it like we are currently, classroom bans, or do you try to do the full day ban like what some of these other entities are gonna do? And again, Director Donnelly shared a lot of information about that. And there's compelling arguments on both sides. I just haven't seen enough data to tell me which one is gonna be the way to go for our district yet. I mean, if I had a magic wand and I could make cell phones disappear for the whole day, definitely would do it.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't know if it's feasible with.
Oh, autonomous MC. I turn my mic back on.
LA County might be the one big, it would be nice to see the data coming.
But the problem
out
is
of
they're
there.
not implementing it right away, are they?
I think they're already implemented,
Are they?
is my understanding.
Okay, well, we can talk about that in
Whatever,
October
yeah.
when
Don't
we
worry
get into
about
cell
it.
phones.
Let's get this
Yeah.
meeting over with.
All right, so any further discussion on the mental health task force piece?
No, you guys can figure out what to do with that.
Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries, thank you. All right, we will move on to committee meeting updates, and we will start with Director Heidman on the Policy and Community Relations Committee.
Well, talking about mental health policy 516, is new this year to the district, and we're required to provide access space for students to partake in telehealth sessions right in the school district, in the buildings, et cetera. So that's a good thing. Cell phone policy, obviously, we're waiting for more data. Our next meeting is going to be October 30th. I don't think we need to schedule anything earlier because we don't have data. So my understanding is October 30th is our next meeting.
We changed it to the 16th.
Yeah. Yeah, we did move it so it would be prior to the next
Okay.
board meeting because we committed in our board resolution to make a policy decision in October if we could.
Why did we move that board meeting?
The October one?
Yeah.
Indigenous.
Yeah, there's a holiday.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Why don't we just move them to Tuesdays? This end of the month thing is just kind of, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah.
I just know this year we have like 4 or 5 of them that have been moved.
Yeah, it was weird how they all felt like that.
Yeah.
And then the other one in November I think falls that way for election
don't know.
canvassing.
And then policy 902 and 902B. 902 deals with the use of school facilities and equipment. And policy 902B deals with alcoholic sales at Gitche Zibby. And it was recommended that no changes be made at this point in time. We discussed it, so.
Right, and so
We
those
voted
are
on
pretty
that
minimal.
consent
And
agenda.
they were in the consent agenda, so they're already
Yes.
approved.
Yes, they are part of the consent agenda. So, end of report.
Okay, we'll move on to long-range planning facilities and with Director Dondelinger.
Well, here's the deal. The softball field is been leveled, and they put an ADA accessible path from the baseball field over to the softball field. Both the tracks at the high school and Forest View have been replaced and painted, resurfaced. Some of the elementaries are getting delayed egress doors for runners. There's such a thing. Some of them try to get away. So that should eliminate some of that.
You're talking about like at Riverside or?
Talking about the elementary schools. Some of these little kids, they just all of a sudden decided they are leaving and they'll run out the street and stuff like that. So now there's like a delay on the doors. So they give somebody time to catch up to them and settle them down. There's new ADA accessible playground equipment going to Forest View. And they're looking at Forest View's access control system. There's a little better crisis response update, which I think will be a great thing. The signage for the GZ has been designed. It's really cool. And there's a landscaping plan. If any of you have been to that, it's looking pretty shaggy out there. And it pretty much found a maintenance-free way of handling that. I don't know if you've met Jeff yet, but Jeff's really doing a nice job, I think, the little bit I've worked with him. That's it.
All right, slide over to Director Ward for the Finance and Legislative Committee update.
The, most of the finance stuff has been in the consent calendar. The only thing that I guess, was Mount Schiegel in this consent? I don't remember if I saw that in there or not. Mount
They
Schiegel?
don't need to be. They're underneath the limit that we have set
Oh,
for
yeah,
the
okay,
school.
that's
They're
right.
just updating us.
Okay. Carrie, Marcy's gonna talk about the CARES planning. Basically, there was, we talked about policy 714 with fund balances, there was no change on that. Basically, that was it. Next meeting is December 3rd. That's in.
Okay, great. Thanks, Director Ward. We will bypass the Brainerd Public Schools Foundation report since Director Spear is not in attendance tonight. And we will move on to Equity Task Force with Director Brecken.
Okay, so we had our first meeting, probably a week ago now. We are continuing to focus on the community inside and outside the walls of the schools. Just kind of working with them to get input about how they perceive things and things that they would like to see happen within our buildings. We support MTSS district goals by identifying strategies that are highly effective for a wide range of students. And we are creating monthly staff connections through conversation starters, first with principals and then disseminated with staff and buildings. So we're trying to get full district collaboration around the same goal of supporting our students. So kind of what I talked about earlier, just helping staff have strategies for de-escalating students and also dealing with a variety of behaviors that are racist or
Insensitive.
insensitive. Thank you.
Yep. But it's broader than just that. It's all categories, right?
For
It's
sure,
not
right.
racism specific.
Specific, yeah, but I was trying to include all these categories, but insensitive is a good way to say it.
Okay, then I guess we'll bring up Marcy one more time for the business services report.
Right, so in your board agenda is the enrollment report, first one of the year, pretty exciting. I just want to note, so throughout the year, we generally tend to see that students leave, because when you look at this initially, the first column, kindergarten through 12, we're at 5,730. And compared to budget, we're at 5,656. So, you know, one might go, whoa, you're way over budget. But if we look at the 5-year trend, we generally lose about 1.5%. And so if we apply that to the 5,730, we'd be at 5,644, which is about down 12 from the budget. So if we continue to track similar to previous years, we should be right on target.
Is this actual people or is this ADMs?
So the preliminary budget is ADMs,
ADMs.
and then the student enrollment is head count. So
So that's better.
if they,
You switch that to ADMs,
if they all stay, but like I said, we generally see that go down. But we'll look at this during the budget revision, which is normally done, you know, January timeframe, and see if we can see where we're at that point. And we'll continue to give you guys monthly updates on this as well, so you can see that. Any questions on the enrollment? The financial report, the only thing to note is the building construction fund. It did have a change from last year due to the reversal of retainage payables. Otherwise, there's nothing else to note on that one. And then the big one that everybody keeps talking about is the CARES summary. So this was reviewed at the Finance Committee as well. Put this together to summarize all the CARES funds that we've had since 2020, actually. And the grand total as of right now, and this is not final, we still have spending to do, is around 21 million, which is just crazy to think about how much money we've seen with CARES funds. So I just wanted to give you guys that brief summary. It is literally revenues and expenditures. It doesn't go into detail. It's just so that you can see how much money we've received in CARES funding in the last.
And are not receiving it anymore.
Right.
I think that point is very important to hear.
And it's been in all sorts of categories. You know, we received money in food service when food costs were going up. We've received money in community service for after-school care. We've received money in just the general fund for our basic staffing needs. So it's all across the board. Devices, one-to-one devices. That was a big chunk of this money too.
I thought you said that we had 21 million yet to spend.
No.
I was not, I was, no, I was, you know, that was wishful
Now, a
hearing.
byproduct of that was because things like ventilation and other things like that were able to be covered, we were able to, like, this was, I guess, ongoing when I first got on the board 4 years ago. And then we were able to redirect some of those dollars by using some creative allocation of those dollars. That's what allowed us to build the unreserved fund balance up. That gave us the cushion to be able to draw down on it for this particular budget year. So that was done very deliberately by the board at that time to specifically build that balance as a hedge against what we knew would come when this cliff came and the funding dried up. So
hard
even
to
though,
believe we could have inflation.
well, inflation wasn't necessarily factored into it all that well, given what it's done over the last.
Well, that's what caused it. It's just Brainerd got 20, so what did Pequot get?
Well, no, I get
5,
that
and what did
component. I'm
Pillager
talking
get?
about the
5, and
financial
what did
planning piece of it.
St. Cloud get, 100? It's like, we just spent it all, so you gotta imagine that your furnace at your house might go up too. When they're all working here on HVAC. I mean, I'm not picking on us, it's not our fault, but it's just like, wow, it's amazing, $21 million.
Marcy, did the CARES money support the interventionists that we heard about earlier this evening and some of the behavior interventionists too? Did that come out of CARES money?
So the specialists that we had at Forest View
Yep.
and the high school were a part of
Were
CARES.
a part of CARES.
Yep. And then I need to find out more about which positions were being
Like
referenced.
the extra support that elementary schools got.
Yep, because last year, the literacy coaches did go away. Those were quite a staff development.
Oh, that, yeah, okay.
And the reference for the interventionist, reading interventionist today that was talked about
Yeah.
was for the elementary reading interventionist.
Oh, so that came out of that fund?
Came out of CARES?
No,
No,
it did
I don't
not.
think it
That's
did,
what I
did it,
was
Marcy?
trying to figure out.
No, the dollars were very earmarked,
Yes.
Yeah.
like tightly earmarked. It was, it had to be some direct, the device one's probably the loosest one we were able to lean into quite a bit. But it had to be specific to dealing with excess costs caused by the pandemic. So things like the robots that we have roaming the halls, doing the disinfecting and the cleaning and
Yes.
and some of that stuff. So we were able to take certain positions, like when Heidi Hahn was the assistant superintendent, she was also the COVID director, so we were able to defray most of her salary as the assistant superintendent and bucket it over in the COVID money, so then the dollars that were left over from that were able to go into the general fund and build the reserve up. So it was very, what I would say is very strategic. And Marcy and the team did an absolutely fantastic job of getting creative with that stuff and really finding a way to kind of redirect as much of that money legally as we could to make sure that we could use it in the general fund for when, for what we know is happening now in this budget year and what will almost certainly happen next year as well.
Mr. Chair.
Director Ward.
So, Marcy, you mentioned that we still have some CARES money available. About how much do we have available?
So as of this report, we have about $1 million in ESSER 3 and then $1 million in ESSER 3 20%. And the 20% is very hard to spend because it is after school and summer activities. So we did as best as we could, but those ones we're going to end up returning funds. The other bucket, we're still trying to spend down. In fact, I'm going to look at the director of technology. We're trying to figure out ways that we can get some Chromebook parts and things like that to spend those down.
And we have till December to do that?
End of this month.
End of this month?
September.
So Fun and Friends doesn't apply to the after-school bucket?
No, so targeted services, ESY, those types of things, not extended school year, sorry.
Okay, no,
That's
Special
summer school.
education services.
Yeah,
They have
Special
to give
education
cool names to
services.
everything, don't they?
Okay.
So can
Extended
we,
school year.
extended school year, so can we offer tutoring services after school and on weekends?
We tried, we did some of that in the previous years. We offered
I'm talking about
busing.
now,
So it only goes through this month.
or through September.
Yes,
All of
Thinking-
it's done in September.
yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
That was our hardest bucket to spend. Otherwise, we did pretty good on everything else.
Any other questions for Marcy before we?
And I do have one other, I want to introduce you to our accountant, Lacey Mathiasen. She's hiding in the corner. But I just,
Surviving back there, that's great.
if I'm ever not able to present, she will be presenting, so I wanted you guys to be able to put a face with a name. And then, you're not as scary too.
I don't know about that.
Wow, really?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Marcy.
Marcy.
Next up, we have filling in for Superintendent Grant, we have our Executive Director of Schools, the
Thank you.
Terry Ross.
Just a couple of comments about opening school this year. We are, as we established, on day 15 of school. Everything's going well. We've actually had a couple of field trips already take place. Superintendent Grant and I made the rounds to all the Open House events and several of the activities that were happening in school buildings before school started. We had about 300 teachers start their literacy, online language and literacy academy training at the end of August. That's going very well. And we have our first district advisory committee meeting next week.
Wonderful, thank you very much. All right, we will move on to Director updates. Maybe I'll kick it off. So obviously, we had plenty of public comment this evening, and a couple of those admonished me not to make any sort of public statement. So we moved it out of the agenda and into director updates, which is our time as directors to share as we see fit in the name of transparency, which is something that I ran on 4 years ago. I would like to read the following statement that I intended to read earlier. My mother raised me with the idea that I should always try to do the right thing, but she also understood that we all make mistakes. She instilled the idea in me that one must always own one's mistakes and apologize to those impacted negatively by those. And while my mistake here does not rise to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors, it requires no less than the application of the standard that my mother taught me all of those years ago. One must always take responsibility. A few weeks ago, I asked a district employee to let me know when candidates filed for the school board election. To be clear, this is public information that any citizen can call or visit the district office and receive at any time that they wish, and people do that. I myself did this almost daily as a private citizen when I first ran for the board 4 years ago. But by asking this district employee to proactively supply me the information, I inadvertently crossed a line and essentially used the privilege of my position to get that information communicated to me in a way that is not available to the general public. And I also failed to consider that my request was inappropriate. First, I want to apologize to the district employees and to Superintendent Grant for putting them in a difficult position and subjecting them to wholly undeserved scrutiny. I interact with these folks so often on district business that I failed to consider that my request was inappropriate at the time that I made it. Second, I apologize to the community at large for this oversight. I shall continue in my ongoing quest to execute my office with the integrity and the best interest of our district and our students in the forefront of what I do. I believe that I have a 4-year track record of fairness, inclusiveness, and respect for the opinions, beliefs, and concerns of every person in this school district. I've worked hard to see beyond my own views and to consider everyone as I work with my board colleagues on making thoughtful decisions regarding the operations of this school district. As the board chair, I have never blocked a single item from being added to the agenda. I have never quashed a single voice, and I have met with people that I vehemently disagreed with to try to understand their views. I would like to conclude by once again apologizing to the district staff who did absolutely nothing wrong. They simply fulfilled a request made by a school board member. Any citizen that has further questions about this matter can certainly engage me directly. My contact information is front and center on the district website. There's a phone number, there's an email address. Give me a call and I will be glad to talk to you about this in more detail, but I see no reason to use more district resources and time on this matter. Thank you very much. That concludes my director report for this evening.
Sure.
Director Heidman.
My only comment is that I think and I'm also the policy committee chair, I think we do need to look at maybe some guardrails so something like this doesn't happen in the future. And hopefully we'll avoid future controversies and or misunderstandings. And I think that's something that I think we're going to bring up. I'm going to bring this up for discussion in policy. And if we have something, I think then everyone can see what's in front of them and take the appropriate steps. So for sure, guardrails, et cetera. So that is my only comment.
I'm passing.
I'm passing.
I've talked plenty today.
I'm not passing. My only report is about the student rep. Director Brecken and myself brought up about a student rep on the school board, and we have met with a committee that we've set up with that, and has been very, very fruitful, in my opinion. We do have a student rep on this committee. It's a young lady that Reese Glenn, excuse me, that we heard from last year at a board meeting. She presented on Indigenous women and did a remarkable, if you remember that, remarkable, in my opinion, piece. So we've met with high school administration, with district administration, Director Brecken, myself, and the student, what we have done so far. The student did ask why when we first met, the student did ask, what was the board's hesitation about having a student rep on the school board? And we just basically said that that's a good question. We do know that each individual board member has their reasons for whatever they feel, and we did feel that we came up with, and Director Brecken, you correct me on anything that I misrepresent here. We did feel that the directors, our board members, came up with a good solution on considering putting students on committees where they might have more of a voice, more opportunity to get into an interest area of their own. And so that's the direction we are headed in right now. And I will say this, that we're doing an application, we're doing a parent forum, we are doing a process, and our next meeting will be set up this week. Actually, we're not meeting this week, but the meeting will be set up this week to bring forward not necessarily a final product, but another report next time as to where we are. It's been, in my opinion, it's been very fruitful. Reese has had great input along with district administration and high school administration. Director Brecken?
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of things. So we're looking at at students applying for whatever committee they have an interest in, and they'll go through some kind of interview process.
Yep.
And then we would likely move committee meetings to the high school so those students could be excused from class. And we recognize, like, for student support services, I think we meet quarterly, so it may not be a huge investment of their time, but part of our intent is to look at it as a learning experience for those kids who have some interest in governance and being a part of an organization that has lots of different legs that it's needs to be able to function, so that's what we were.
I changed my mind.
On what? You want to talk?
Comments, Ward got it 3 minutes. You ready?
We aren't limited to 3 minutes, you can,
It says it in the rules.
does it?
It says right in our agenda tonight, 3 minutes.
Oh, we just put that in for John, it's not for you.
Oh, good. Here's the deal. I'm not burning the house down or anything, but I have felt, since I've been on this school board, that there's all this stuff happens behind closed doors. That it's like the Wizard of Oz. I felt as though we've been blindsided at meetings by administration, which all is gone now. Nobody's here to take the blame, right? But, remember our first meeting in January, we had to have the emergency meeting to approve the budget. I told Heidi, don't ever do this to me again. Like, we never know what's coming. I talked to you about the school forest. You'd already walked it. No one told me about it, and now Michelle and John have their own committee. I don't think it's cool, but whatever.
This committee was approved by the board.
Yeah.
Oh, was I gone?
I'm not
I
sure
don't know
if
if you were
you
gone
were
or not, but it was
but
approved by the board.
When?
We talked about it.
When we talked, were you here when we talked about the student rep? Yes, you were,
I
because
was
you.
at the retreat.
No, you were here when we talked about the student rep, Director Dollinger, because you were the one that said, I'm not sure that this is appropriate for the student to be on a school board. You
I
made
know it's not
that, you made that
appropriate
comment,
for
so I know you
someone
were
that's not
here.
elected to be on the school
I know
board.
you were here. So it was approved by the board.
Oh, well, I'll look it up.
Good.
Good, I'm done. Motion to adjourn.
I do have one addendum to my director update. Superintendent Grant has requested that we look at calendars. I think we should try to get a board retreat on the calendar as soon as we possibly can. There's got a lot of weird topics sitting out there that we haven't addressed in a while, not the least of which is some of those things, but he asked me to work with you folks on calendar dates for between
you're just
now and
gonna
let's say
toss them
Halloween.
out? You're just gonna toss them out?
Yeah, I mean, we can do that. We can coordinate, we can have staff coordinate and try to find a day that works.
What month you talking about?
I would say
October.
between now and the end of October. Preferably before the next school board meeting would be my,
And when's the next school board meeting?
October
I already
23rd, I
screwed up the
believe.
policy. meeting.
21st,
Yeah.
it's October 21st.
21st, excuse me.
I have a recommendation on that, is that I'd appreciate it if we didn't have to do it on Friday afternoons.
That's your preference, or?
Don't do it or do it?
Don't do it on Friday
Oh.
afternoons.
Well, I mean, you were advocating Saturdays for a long time.
I'd love to do Saturday morning.
And I think before we were
We
getting
could be done
pushback,
by
I mean,
noon easy.
my preference would also be that because
Saturday'd be
those-
great, just go get this knocked out and you have the rest of your day to do what you want.
I tend to agree that they become a pretty substantial time commitment for people that are locked up in, day jobs.
Careers.
Yeah, yep, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'd like, but
All right, well, I'll take that under consideration as we look at dates, if everybody's amenable to that. I don't know Director Spear's mind on that, but I think Saturday works for you, Director Heidman, if we look at those instead. Saturday mornings, I think we were looking at, to try to do like 9 to 1 or something.
Randy's on 6 Saturdays and a Sunday.
I'll try to fit it into my schedule. No.
We can put a nap time in the middle of it if you want.
You'd have to get up a little earlier.
All right, so everybody's comfortable with me working with staff to look at calendars for Saturdays
Yeah,
between
let's
now
just
and
give us a
then?
couple options and we'll pick them.
Okay.
I don't have anything pressing going on.
Okay.
At least on my schedule.
Okay, so then the only other future meetings that are currently on the calendar are, we have an October 16th, I didn't know that either. just
I
so
screwed
know.
up, so.
Where we will be talking about cell phones, so if anybody has any input or stuff like that, or data that they're finding, please send it along to Director Heidman and myself, since we're on that committee, and we can, incorporate that into the discussions with the team. MEA break is October 17th through the 18th, so there is no school. Next board meeting is on October 21st, and then there is a long-range planning and facilities meeting at noon on October 22nd. Otherwise, that's everything we have between now and November.
Great.
All right. If there's no further business before the board, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll give you one. Second.
So we have a motion from Director Heidman with a second from Director Donalinger for adjournment. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Everybody have a nice evening.